Okay, I'm going to call this select board workshop to order. We're dealing with the compensation part of the budget. It's just a conversation that will not include public comment. But very important that the public hears what we're talking about. So let's start.
You should have a printed copy of what I have up here on the computer.
Have the warrants. Capital asset plan, do not have.
Should be before that one.
Here it is. This,
That is it.
so let's start right at the top.
Okay.
And let's, I guess we'll, Andy, you and I will come to some kind of understanding amongst us.
Yes.
Right. So the deputy clerk has already been set. Andy, have you had a chance to look at that?
I have not.
I do have her email down in her file. We have done
Okay.
that.
I haven't. It's a 6% increase. So, an excellent eval. So it's almost $3,000. I think that's fair. I think it brings her in line with other towns. So, should we move each one or should we move the total or?
I think in the workshop, we're just kind of doing the work and then as we go through the process, in a regular meeting. You're gonna motion like this when it comes to your recommendations. We're just trying to fine tune. And the breakdown of the 6% is the 4% COLA that the board set in January plus the 2% merit increase.
Okay.
That's how that breaks down.
So I approve of that. Andy, I'm not sure. Do you have comments on that so that when we go to the budget committee?
No, I think that's absolutely
Okay.
fine.
So at least we can present it to the budget committee in unison, and then if we have banter back and forth, then. All right, next one is the town administrator. We have talked about putting town administrator's salary in keeping with other town administrators in the local area. The increase is 15%. Should be a $10,000 increase that would raise the request to 77 and change. We feel that was enough? Did we think that?
I thought that was perfect.
So in keeping with hiring another person?
Right, that was in line with the MMA salary survey.
There's an opportunity as someone who's sitting with us to comment if you'd like, okay? Good. All right, so we'll present that to the budget committee. The part-time clerk comes in at 32.8.
Do you like a breakdown?
Please.
Okay, so initially starting, the person will start at 21. We typically, as standard practice, offer a 90-day eval upon favorable review. We increase, so I have factored that potential, and then I have factored in the cost of living raise. So this would be effective like what July 1 would look like. So that would put it effectively at between $22 and $23 an hour come July. It's an up to 27-hour-a-week position, so there might be some weeks where they work less and some weeks where they might work a little bit more.
That'll be based on need.
What's up?
Will that be based, should I sit next to you?
It's okay, I can hear it.
Will that be based on office need?
So there will be a sort of a base schedule and then the understanding that some weeks when it's busier, like tax payment due week, we might need them a little bit more. And then a week where it's really quiet, like in February, we might say, hey, why don't you take an extra day or two this week?
Okay.
Yeah.
And not that it's the business of this meeting. Have you found two people for final interviews, or have you had the final interviews?
So we interviewed 5 candidates on Wednesday. We have narrowed down to 2, checked references today, and we have invited the 2 back for a job shadow as their second interview this week, and I'm waiting to hear. I think we'll be in a very good position to make our decision by Thursday. Yeah, and we were very happy with the caliber of people we got to meet last week. We had some great applicants.
Okay, just so it's transparent, are there benefits attached to this? Are there benefits attached to this?
So they are considered a level 2 employee, so there would be the option of, health insurance at a 75% rate. They can elect to take the other employee, benefits if they want. Their PTO would be under the main earned leave, which is 1 hour for every 40, worked, and they can put into the 457, but the town doesn't. So that's what the level 2 package offers.
Okay, we're looking at this sheet right. Got it. Okay. Andy, are you all set with that?
I am.
Okay, you've done the. Right, we're just consolidating our opinions so that when we go to the budget committee, we can set the. So 32.8, okay with you, Kate, for the part-time? All right, the CEO. I'm gonna, cause it's a personnel matter, I'm gonna table this one.
Okay.
All right, I'm not sorry. I was thinking about the next line.
Okay.
Had a little jump scare there, okay. The CEO, we haven't got anything in here. What's our thought, Andy?
I'm good with a 40-hour-a-week position, but we're gonna have to come up with a compensation number for that.
Okay. And the salary range was between 55 and 65,
Correct.
or a little, for CEOs. So you have any recommendations? Chime in.
I would start off at the low 60s at this point until all licenses are,
Kate, any thoughts about, this is the CEO position, we're recommending it just be one person for a 40-hour week at 62,000. So that's what we'll present. All right. And the town planner is the position I'd like to table.
yes.
I'm just gonna leave that number there, just.
Please leave that number there, yes. That would be 65 as a placeholder. The IT position, can you talk about that?
This one, even though it says 11%, I don't know why the math is coming out. Oh, I'm sorry, because she did get a 90-day bump. So this is factored in at the 6% in July 1 for the 2% merit and the 4% COLA.
So she's at 12,130.
And that's an up to 10-hour-a-week position.
Andy, are you okay with that?
I'm good with that.
8?
She seems to be well with.
I agree.
All right, no bump for the ZBA secretary.
Ballot clerks was the one right above. I increased that because I found out by law, we have to pay our ballot clerks. We can't just accept volunteer time. So I have to issue checks for everyone. We've kind of typically budgeted on the notion that some of them just didn't want to receive pay. They wanted to volunteer,
Okay.
but, so that's why that one has a $300 increase. So then the
Is that
ZBA.
back pay, or do we get?
Back pay.
All those years I've did it for.
Right?
Okay, Andy, are you all set with a $1,500 ballot clerk?
I am.
Okay.
So what are all the lines from the past? On that?
That's what we budgeted and that's what we paid out. because many of them didn't want to take pay. That's why you see in 2022, only 450 paid out, because almost half, actually probably most 60 to 65%, they didn't want to. Yeah, they wanted to volunteer their time, which is great. Yeah, but no, if we pay them, they can donate back to the Pete Pownell Warm Fund or FCS or whatever they so choose with it now. So, but by law, we do have to issue a check to them for their time.
Thanks for that clarification. All right, ZBA secretary.
I mean, that's to do abutters mailing and minutes. So far ZBA hasn't had anything this year, so.
Andy, you okay with that line?
Yep. Let's leave it.
All right, the recording secretary.
This one I have a question on.
Let's do it.
So we actually haven't increased her since we started. Her pay has kind of stayed steady at $18 an hour. So maybe we probably should have been looking at, we don't actually eval her,
Right.
but we probably should have been building cost of living in. So I think we need to consider
I agree.
an adjustment
I
there.
agree. So let's, Andy, suggestions? You're the fiscal conservative here.
I would probably give her a bump to 20.
She's at 20.
She's at
18.
She's at 18?
Mhm.
What am I looking at?
I have the request at 2,000 right now because we haven't been overspending yet. We may need to bump that up a couple of hundred if we move her from 18 to 20 an hour.
Okay. So Andy suggests 2,000. Do you agree?
Is that what 20 is, 2,000?
I would move it to 22 if we're gonna move her up $2 an hour.
2,200.
Yeah. Just to make sure we're covered, because we're halfway through the year and we've spent that line at almost exactly half on, and we still have the rest of the year to go. So at 18, we're right on track. If we bump her up a little bit, I want to make sure we have enough.
All right, so 22 it is. Planning board stipends. Thoughts, Andy?
I would leave them as they are.
Would you like the breakdown? Okay. So it's 500 for a regular voting member. The chair gets 1,000. And then the secretary has a separate line where she gets an additional 500. So she technically gets 1,000 too, or the person that becomes the secretary. This has an extra 500 in it, should we decide that we need to move or you want to pay the alternates. We have never paid the alternates, but this was the amount we set 3 years ago.
Thoughts, Andy, about paying the alternates?
Once they become regular members, yes.
What if we were to give them because recruitment is something that we're
Yeah.
not working on. It's part of our goals. What if we give each one $250? Because they do attend. So it is their time and it would just be, realize that's like dinner out. Katie, you all?
I'm okay with that.
Giving $250 stipend to anyone who's brave enough to alternate planning board. All right, I'm gonna need help on the mileage.
That one's, let me get in there. So the current rate is 70 cents. The typical rate, we follow IRS rate. It goes up 2 to 3 cents every year. It's a crystal ball.
You're guessing.
I'm guessing. I will say, as far as clerks training, there's a lot of hybrid training. That doesn't mean I have to go to Augusta or the clerks have to go to Augusta as often. We can take it Zoom. Or we have the option of in-person. So that has helped cut the mileage back down some, but as things are getting active in the town, that covers code enforcement, that covers the town planner if they're traveling, and the front office for deposit runs, post office and training. So I think 3,800 is pretty fair. I expect it to go up to 72 to 73 cents next year for half the year, so.
Okay. Well, explain, Andy?
I'm good with that.
Kate? So be it. Stipend for the select board We have no say.
That's budget committee. They're gonna discuss next week, next Monday.
Stipend for the assessor.
She's a set price of 16 a month, 1,600 a month. She's
She's not,
technically a subcontractor,
she's not going up?
not this year. Unless she tells me tomorrow, but I'm pretty certain she went up last year, so I'm pretty certain we're holding steady. I'll verify that tomorrow, but I'm not aware that she's going up.
Okay, let us know.
Yes, yep.
ACO,
So that right now has a 4% COLA built in. I wasn't sure about a merit built in to the ACO.
We did not have a evaluation with Dick. He was not here.
so let's leave it at 4, okay? ACO training, deputy ACO. Guess it would have been up to Dick to evaluate. Let's raise that 4%.
Okay, make a note.
Andy, you okay with that?
Yep.
Great.
ACO training.
Yeah, that's-
Sure.
I think 100 is fine. A lot of the trainings are free too, because they're required.
All right, training in general. That's your line.
Yep, so this includes an amount of 300 if the CEO wanted to go to that conference. It was a previous request from prior CEOs. 700 for the town admin to go to the summer conference, and then 600 for the planners conference. These amounts were budgeted last year as well. Then the difference is just, trainings with municipal association or relevant, boards and committees.
You assuming that is enough in here for the part-time clerk?
I think we'll be fine, because both Pascal and I have taken all these trainings for the most part, so it's really gonna be, for her. And they're usually $35 to $40 a piece, and there's 4 or 5 of them, so I think we'll be perfectly fine. And the motor vehicle is free, because it's required by law for her to take that.
And you okay?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
It's okay.
FICA employer,
So FICA and Medicare are gonna be calculated based on the wages. So right now, they're calculated based on what we put in. So if we make adjustments, those numbers are gonna change. So I wouldn't worry about either of those because there's a percentage that we have to pay. So,
set, right?
it's a set, yeah.
And I'm assuming the Medicare employer is the same?
Same, yep, same exact thing.
Now, paid family,
Medical leave. I have good news on this. So last year, there was a lot of confusion and uncertainty about if we were gonna need to participate. At the time I budgeted, we were supposed to. They have now changed the law that if you pay 15 or less employees for less than 20 weeks a year, then we as employers don't have to put in and we qualify. So I had originally budgeted the 0.5% that I thought we were going to be required. We don't need to do it now. So that's a 0 line for this coming year. And
unemployment,
those again are based on specific rates. So the first like $25,000 of everybody's employment are subject to certain rates under the unemployment. The rates have gone up a little bit. Now that we're going off actual audits, I'm getting better data to budget for it. As you can see right now, we're at 3105 for this year, and we budgeted 2226, partly due to some great recruitment, and bringing on more people at the fire department. We have more staff in the office, things like that. Plus the rates change. So I think we're going to be in a better position with that figure.
all right, I don't even know what the next slide.
ICMA, really Mission Square, that's the 457B retirement offered to level 1. That is a 6%. That's formula based again, based on the gross wages of above. So that might fluctuate as we continue to move through.
And health.
So this is budgeted at the potential of 2 family plans, 2 single plans, and 1 health insurance buyout. Per our personnel policy, if a full-time employee has qualifying health insurance, either through a spouse or another avenue, the town then reimburses them 25% of the yearly premium. We pay it out 4 times a year. So that accounts for that in there as well. There was a 9% increase in the health insurance this year. I have factored in a potential 6% from January to July next year. So again, it's a little bit of a guesswork, but I'm hoping that this was a little bit of a one-time bump that big.
Andy?
It's all Greek to me.
Question? All right, public works, so the total is, okay, we don't need.
Do you want me to explain that? The reason I do a total is it just makes it easier for the formula base. So if you start on the next line, it's going by the individual wages.
Okay, so can you explain that again?
Sure. So what I do, so originally when I first got here, Public Works was all in one bucket. And I sort of separated it out because we didn't have a track to know what we were really paying our people for their base rate. And then I used their call signs. And so just to make it easier on the formula, I actually, that first line totals all the wages of the individual people plus the overtime, just for my formula based. But if you want to go individually, start with Highway 1 next, and you'll be talking about their base pay.
Okay. All right, so we're projecting a 8% increase for the crew. Or for the whole. I'm under.
Yes,
wait,
yep, if you're looking at that total top line wage, yes. And then the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines breaks that down.
All right, so, highway number 1, 8%. Andy, you're more in tune with, is that a fair?
I think we're bringing it in line with the surrounding towns.
That 2 of these are higher than the 6%. We had 2 employees that we took on this year that were new employees to us. And after a 6-month, 90-day evaluation, they got a bump then, which would be like 2%. And then with a good evaluation, they get the 4% COLA plus another 2. So that would be 6. And that's what brought 2 of those to 8%. That makes sense.
All right, so we also have an 8% for Public Works Highway 3 and a 6% for Public Works Mechanic and a 6% for the part-time position and 8% for overtime. And we agree that that's generally set by the road commissioner based on evaluation.
Yes.
You all right with that, Kate? All right, let's go back to the road commissioner.
Again, we did a MMA salary survey. And we discussed going hourly. We decided we wanted 1 year to kind of watch his hours and to base our hourly figures on. So instead, we went with the MMA salary survey and put him around 75,000.
With the understanding that there would be a continuing dialogue of hours and those big. let's
Big
call it
snowstorms.
Super fun weeks and stuff like that, trying to come up with an alternative discussion to see which would fit this position better.
Right.
So that we weren't able to, just didn't have enough time to work it out. So, okay, I think.
We'll have to work on this prior to budget season next year.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
it'll be a conversation though. So, Kate, the line is a 9% increase to $75,000 for the road commissioner. Is that all right?
Yep.
That'll go to the budget committee. Relief drivers. We've cut back on that because of the part-time position.
I believe so, Matt. That was our factoring, the relief driver reduction because of the part-time position. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we've got FICA, which we have no say on. Medicare,
Formula based as well.
great, great.
And then for his health insurance, that includes 2 single, 2 family, plus 1 buyout.
Okay,
Yep.
great. All right. So that totals a 10% increase, which we were anticipating. Good. All right, the fire department. Is it, anyone questions about the road department? Fire department, officer stipend. It's gone up to 55, that's a 22% increase. You okay with that? There are new officers, right?
Yes,
So that-
I'm going to abstain from that one.
So there are new officers and there's a raise involved in that. You okay with that? Chief stipend.
Okay, we discussed again with some MMA surveys and the hours that he's putting in, moving him up to 20,000 a year. We also discussed the possibility of adding health benefits, but that's to be determined, and we'll have to have that conversation with the chief.
Well, no, we have to have that conversation here
Yeah.
amongst ourselves. So we sort of establish a precedent that given a situation, that because we now have a compensation policy instead of a compensation ordinance, that the board is able to, in situations, offer health insurance if deemed appropriate. So, my thought is if the board agrees that we would offer at this particular time, a level 2 benefit package with this, depending on whether or not the chief needed it or what's your thought, Andy?
I think it should be offered. I don't know what his situation is, but
Stay within the
yeah. So,
workshop. All right, so that'll be part of a conversation when we adjourn the workshop and meet with the budget committee. You okay with offering? All right. So that is, the chief stipend is $20,000 with the possibility of level 2 health benefits, okay, to the compensation. All right, call pay. Goes up 25%, Andy?
it does, we've added, pretty much doubled the membership, so
Appropriate.
it is.
All right, training, we'll have to take that on face value. Maintenance, sure what maintenance, is that compensation for doing maintenance?
Yes. And again, they're all going up due to the upswing in membership.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, you have any question or thoughts about call pay, training, maintenance? Mileage, like a Medicare, so I'm not sure, and I'll have to talk to the chief after we get out of, but there was I've had a conversation with the chief about offering on-call pay for the rescue workers. So that would be a stipend each night they were on call. I'm not sure, we'd have to add another line to the
Yeah.
department, so. But I'd like to get the board's thoughts about that before we meet with the budget committee.
I think it's one way to reward people for taking on, going on calls at nighttime. More for the EMS side of things to avoid burning out the people that typically do.
Sorry, I wasn't specific. This would be specifically for the EMS group,
Yeah,
not for the department, fire department.
it would be for, you would have on-call people, probably a fire department helper as well. So it's not just one person going out on a call in the middle of the night.
So Kate, the proposal is to develop a on-call stipend for any EMS and potentially fire department helper. They would have a assigned night. They would be paid a stipend in order to block that night so that chief would not always be whoever, it wouldn't always be one person going, there'd always be guaranteed one person, if there are enough people signed up to be available. Do you agree that that was something?
I think so. I would be interested to hear a little more about how that's actually worked.
Can we get input from the chief on this
Not
one?
during, should have done it with Matthew, not during.
Okay.
That'll come during the budget committee part of the select board. Okay. Human services stipend, Becky.
That's 1,000 for the health officer, 500 for the deputy health officer. Pretty easy.
Questions, Andy or Kate?
Done.
Cemetery wages. Looks like we're have to pay a little more.
Yes, they actually now have a crew. And getting the work done that needs to get done, doing a great job. It went up. We do have the ability to pull from their general fund to help balance the budget, but I wanted to be a little more reflective of the actual, so we're not draining that general fund each year.
Andy, you okay with it?
I am.
Kate? Okay, any other questions? Any others more?
No, I feel like we're,
Feel like we're ready to face the tigers of the budget committee? All right, I'm gonna move that we come out of the workshop.
Second.
Favor? And I'm gonna move that we enter the regular select board meeting. I call the regular select board meeting of March 10th order, and as a tradition, if you can rise and pledge your allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one God, liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I swallowed wrong.
And
I swallowed wrong.
if you, budget committee wants to come forward, that'd be great. We have a couple business items, but you're certainly welcome. First item is the AP warrant number 20 in the amount of $85,092.05.
I will move that we pay AP warrant number 20 in the amount of $85,092.05.
Second,
Been moved and seconded to pay AP warrant number 20 in the amount of $85,092.05. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the payroll journal number 334 in the amount of $14,903.88.
I will also move that we pay payroll journal number 334 in the amount of $14,903.88.
second,
Moved and seconded to pay payroll journal number 334 in the amount of $14,903.88. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the select board meeting minutes of February 24th.
I will move that we accept the minutes of the February 24th select board meeting as printed.
Second.
Moved and seconded to select the select board meetings so capably recorded by Ms. Kathy Hoag, of February 24th, regular select board meeting. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment, non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for anyone resident from the town of Pownell to step forward and be heard by the select board. Is there anyone who is not on the agenda that would like to step forward and be heard? Seeing nobody. Next item is department head reports. All department head reports can be viewed on the website. You click on the department and there are their reports. Select board, any questions? Department heads that are present at this time?
No.
No? Any report from the select board at this time?
I will say that our recent trash bins do no good in the wind.
Duly noted. Kate? Okay. Now, new business, budget presentations. First up, CAP committee. That would be Mr. Schuman, I think.
Our TV is not working, but I did print you the PowerPoint that he's going to present along with the spreadsheet. So you should have that in your packets.
Down, please, or did you stand up there?
You know what? Probably easier, Paul, if you pulled up a chair.
Up the best, Paul.
Just give him the mic. We're ready for you, Mr. Schuman.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Paul Schuman. I'm Chair of the Capital Asset Planning Committee, and I'm here to share our work this past year and what our conclusions are in terms of the budget recommendation. I apologize that you can't see it on TV, although if you're like me, I can't see it on the TV anyway. I can sit up here. So assuming that you're looking at, Becky, you said everybody has a copy of this. On to page 2 is a quick recap of the committee charge. It was updated last year at the recommendations of the committee to the select board, and they approved. And one thing that I wanted to just call your attention to, and that's the last bullet, communicate, which is new for us, but something that we thought was important in meeting our charge for the town, and that is really to communicate with other boards, committees, and departments regarding future capital needs. And some people ask, well, why do you need to do that? You're the committee looking at future capital needs. It's because we don't see everything that's going on in town. We don't have the pulse of everything that's going on in town. And so we would just want to make other groups, and this is our first attempt at making other groups aware of our need to do this, is that you're doing something in the town that may create a need for future capital improvements. And the thing that comes to mind is last year or 2 years ago, we got grants from Mallet Hall to add the AV system and the new boiler and some other things. Well, the committee became aware of that and said, well, geez, aren't those things that will have to be replaced at some time in the future? So we, one night, discussed all of the things that we had gotten from grants and decided that the boiler and the AV system were assets that qualified to be included in the plan, so that we have now included them in the plan that we're looking at tonight and forward. So when the boiler is due for replacement in 20 years or whatever it is, we will have provided for that. So that's the type of thing where if the planning board, we're doing something with a new development in town, and I don't think they do this now, but there was something that some town assets were being provided by the developer that, oh geez, at some time we're gonna have to provide for the refreshment of that, or the recreation committee were to install $50,000 worth of playground equipment at the school that the town would own. At some point, somebody has to provide the funds to do that, and that would qualify as an asset that the town would provide for, and the committee would include in its planning. So that's what that's for, and we'll be, now that our plan is pretty much done, we'll be contacting the other boards and committees in town just to say, hey, be aware if there's something that you think we might be interested in, just let us know, and we'll take a look at it and make sure it gets included in any plan.
Can everybody hear Paul?
The next page is major assumptions. Every year, as we do the plan, and you probably are aware that we almost start at scratch, and we go back and refresh the plan every year. And some major assumptions that we have to make the plan work for the town is replacement cost inflation rate. And we get a lot of help from the department heads as they come in to talk to us about all of the assets in their department and what's happening with the replacement costs for each of the items there. And it really, much to our surprise, we learned, because of the pandemic and supply chain issues and other things, that inflation in the replacement cost drives our world because it's so crazy right now. And it's still crazy, even though the pandemic is behind us and a lot of the supply chain issues are behind us. Really a big driver of what is planned for the future. And now we have tariffs coming back. Everybody's talking about it now. We don't know what that means for the future. Financing, appropriation, or bonding, certainly we make decisions as to what items qualify for either type of financing. And then appropriation smoothing is another key part of what we do. And really that's, and I'll show you a chart later on that shows how that works. But we look at short-term, what's happening over the next 5 years, and how do we smooth out the appropriation so as not to create a roller coaster ride for the taxpayer. We don't want taxes going up and down as capital expenditures are made. So we try and smooth that out short-term over the next 5 years, year by year. For years 6 through 15 of our 20-year plan, it's done just kind of an across-the-board assumption for that period, just to kind of get us a smooth idea of what's happening. As we get out into the future, a lot's going to change before we get there. So we don't spend a whole lot of time on it, but we do some research and some analysis of the information we're getting to find out what that should be. In the next page, you're getting a truncated view of the asset schedule. Just because it becomes a bad eye chart if you try and look at the whole thing at once. But you can see the top part of the asset schedule, the 2 new items from Mallet Hall, AV equipment, Mallet Hall boiler are there and included. We review this in its entirety for the current replacement cost. And we do that item by item with the help of the department heads and the service life of the equipment to see whether or not it's on track to live its expected life, go shorter, go longer. And that is an exercise that we do much to the chagrin of Chief Peters and Road Commissioner Nielsen every year, but it's truly a help in deciding the decisions we have to make the plan work over the long term. One thing I will bring to this group's attention, and particularly the select board, we do not have anyone in town that's assigned to speak to us and present on behalf of the Mallet Hall assets included in our plan. And we certainly would like to have someone responsible for that so that in the future we can go over how those replacement costs are changing and then be sure that somebody is watching those assets as they go through their life and whether they're gonna make it to their expected end of life, go longer, go shorter, whatever, so that everything is protected.
Right.
I assume that will be me coming into this next year, so we'll schedule that. Yep, nope, that will be me.
That's fine. I'll know who to reach out to.
Yep.
Next fall, as we begin setting up meeting plans. So then that kind of brings us quickly to what type of appropriation is the committee looking for? That's on the next slide. For fiscal year 26. And in year one, I've circled the fiscal year appropriation of $156,000 is that we would be requesting. That's up from this year's $155,000 appropriation. We're very pleased that it did not increase significantly. That due in large part to the transfer from surplus that happened at town meeting last year, so that the planned increases years 1 through year 5 are going up at a rate of 3% generally per year. And then thereafter, for years 6 through 15 would go up at 6% in the plan. What they'll actually be will be up to circumstances when we get there. What we're finding is that the 6% increase in replacement cost is what we're getting out of our analysis of how replacement costs have been changing since prior to the pandemic. For public safety, replacement costs are higher than that. They tend to be a little bit strange. Would have excluded them from our analysis, but generally the composite inflation rate for all of the items that we include is around 6%. And that's what the committee is comfortable including. But because of the transfer from surplus, we are able to reduce the first 5 years because we have a very strong capital reserve balance, and that's one of the benchmarks we use in looking at how's the plan working. It's not only how much are we changing the tax rate, but do we have security in the amount of capital reserve fund that we're planning for. And we set a target, that target grows for 20 years at the rate of inflation. And for at least the first 5 years, we're looking at exceeding 200% of that target, which we feel is really strong, which makes us feel very comfortable that one, we can cover any anomaly that should happen. Two, we can reduce the appropriation in the plan for the next 5 years. And hopefully we've guessed all the variables well enough that we can stay true to that.
Can I just interrupt you for a minute?
Certainly.
So this is a kind of a hiccup in the process, but the select board often discusses after the CAP presentation on how much, or if any money that we will transfer from the undesignated fund balance to different parts of the budget. And we typically, what was it last year?
300,000. Yep.
Need to look at the undesignated fund balance and make a recommendation. So that won't come, and I'm sorry that it can't come any sooner than it does, but that'll come after our next select board meeting.
I did jot down the balance, so I have it for tonight in case you asked. Yep.
Why don't we go through, sorry that it's.
No, that's no wrong. We are not anticipating any additional transfers. If there is a transfer from surplus, then we will include that in next year's plan. And our hope is that we can use that to offset some of the increase in appropriation.
After Paul's presentation, then we'll discuss. Okay. Go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry for interrupting.
And
Can I ask, oh, go ahead, Paul.
if you're looking at that particular slide, just to give you an idea how things work. The way we're doing it now in the last couple of years, you look at year 5. And year 5 is the last year that we do individual year smoothing. And after that, it's kind of a blanket based on the rate of inflation. 6% as we determined from the items we include in the plan. So what we did this year was to figure out what needs to be there in year 5. The plan automatically inflates that forward. We look at our benchmarks, particularly the capital reserve balance, out in the future. Does that look okay? Is it meeting our needs? And I'll show you in the next slide that there's a hiccup coming. But we were comfortable with that hiccup in the plan. We said, all right, year 5 is gonna be that $180,000 we have to get so that the things after that work. So how do we back that down to year 1? So we back that down in increments. And that's how we ended up with the 3% per year average over the first 5 years. When we started this plan back in September, we had the first 5 years at 6%. So we cut that down quite a bit because we were able to utilize that surplus transfer in that way. So 156 is the request from the committee for appropriation for FY '26. And, we'll go from there.
Donna, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Paul, the third bullet point on this slide, the projected capital reserve balance exceeds 2%. Could you just go through that again?
Sure. So one of the things we look at is what capital reserve balance we have on hand each year of the plan. And what is the committee comfortable with? And I know you've been here a while and you've heard me talk about the dump truck. We always wanted to be able to pay for a dump truck, and that was kind of pulled out of the air a few years ago so that we had some criteria for establishing that. We now do that a little bit, now that we're older and wiser and a little bit more mature. We look at a percentage of the replacement cost of the assets funded by appropriation. And we've set that right now at 5%. So we want to have 5%. So we start at 5% of that first year. So that's our target. That target grows by the rate of inflation in the plan. So all through the plan, that's growing at a rate of 6%. One of the things we learned when the pandemic hit and supply chain issues went crazy is that the cost of replacement were growing a lot faster than we were growing our appropriation. And looking out in the future, we saw some, at that time, big issues. And so we learned that we've got to kind of tie this together a little better. So right now, we are doing an analysis each year after we hear from the department heads, and we drop their numbers, or the numbers that we all agree with, into the plan. We then look and say, all right, now what's the rate of inflation? And it's changing over time. It's not coming down like we would like it to, but it doesn't seem to be jumping forward quite as fast as it had been. So 6% is where we've landed on that. And then, so what we're doing is, and what we did in this case is really what helped us lower that appropriation, is we looked at the capital reserve balance and what is it relative to the benchmark? And we were seeing very strong numbers as a percentage of that. And we said, let's see if let's lower the appropriation. And what does it do with the percentage of? So we were able to lower by half what we were planning to appropriate in the first 5 years, or at least half the increase. And we're still maintaining in these 5 years a balance that's 200% or more above our target. So we felt comfortable that we could make this change and still provide the coverage on that capital reserve balance. Because heaven forbid, something happens with a large piece of equipment that's covered by appropriation, and we have to, out of pocket, replace it.
And then my second question is, I just want to make sure I understood what you said. So Chairman was saying that the select board decides afterwards if they want to move any money from the designated fund balance, but you're saying that you're not actually expecting that or anticipating that.
We don't build an expectation of that. I mean, it would be one thing, select board recommends it, town meeting's got to approve it, which wouldn't be till June.
Right.
We need a finished plan before that. So what happens, we have a place in our plan where if we become aware that town meeting has approved a transfer into the capital reserve account, there's a place to put that number, and it will automatically update the plan and influence everything we're doing.
Okay, I got you. Thank you. Great.
So if you go to the next page, I think it's page 6, you'll see a chart of appropriations versus expenditures. The red dotted, no, you don't have color, so the dotted line is the expenditures, and I did put flags on all of those so you can see how much is being expended each of the years. And the solid line with the markers in it is the appropriation. The first 5 years is at the 3%. The next 15 years would be at 6%. It just shows you how we're trying to smooth that out for the taxpayer, and yet always have a sufficient balance in the capital reserve account. I did put an item that we're watching below the chart, and that is in year 17, which would be 2042, the capital reserve balance drops to 56% of the target in our plan. That's got our attention. That's right at the end of 3 years of expenditures of well over $1 million. So you would expect that you're driving your capital reserve down. We've seen this before. We, had a watch item like this before where we watched 10 years in a row, a big group of expenditures coming up to make sure that we had it covered. We will do the same. Right now, we are not concerned about it, but we are going to watch it. We've learned that while this plan feels very good, next year when we go through it, so many things will change that it's kind of like you don't recognize it sometimes. So we know things will change, but we've got to keep watching that large group of expenditures to make sure that capital reserve account has sufficient coverage in it. And then the last chart is the capital spending versus tax commitment. You can see black and white argument. In the dark bottom across there, that is debt service supporting capital in the town budget. And the lighter bar at the top there is the appropriation supporting capital investment in town. And that's all as a percentage of tax commitment. And we have projected what the tax commitment will look like based on the, I think, prior 9 years of actual information. And a couple things that you can read out of this is one is that we have 3 bond issues planned in the next 13 years. In 2030, year 5, in 2032, year 7, and in 2038, year 13. That's mostly public safety equipment with one item from Public Works. You can also see that the percentage of the tax commitment has been trending down over time. That's a good thing or it's a bad thing, depending on how you want to look at it. One is it's good to see costs going down. That's primarily the bond issues that we're paying off over time. We haven't issued bonds for quite a while. So that gives, so the good side is we have the capacity to issue more bonds should we need to. The bad side is sometimes something like this suggests you aren't investing enough in your assets. So I don't have an opinion on that. I could argue it either way right now with what I know, but there are, it's just, I look at that and I see the good and I see the bad, and I don't know which is the right side to fall on, but it's to be aware that we certainly, I think we are doing a good job of trying to keep all of the things in Public Works and public safety that we have, and Mallet Hall that we have on here covered so that the town employees have the equipment they need to provide the service that we all want. We do have assets in town that are not included here, and that's right now by intention. For instance, Mallet Hall is not here as a building. It's now here as a boiler and as an AV equipment. So there's an asset that we don't cover. We don't cover the North Powell Station or the Elmwood Road Station. If we have a future facilities committee, if a project comes out of that, right now, our program would not include covering the building in this plan, but we would cover major pieces of equipment in there. We learned that lesson here, like boilers and heating systems and like major equipment that has a life expectancy less than the structure would have on its own. So that's what I include that for, but I think it is important to see how much of our tax commitment, all paying our property taxes is going to capital improvement. And from that, I'll take presentation, take any questions.
Go ahead, Budget Committee, you're up first. Any questions for Paul?
No, I do not. I asked. him.
You all set? Andy, Kate?
I'm good. I sat in on their last meeting.
Scott, Reed?
Can I just ask, are there other committee members here with you today?
Tyler Fiegel who walked in, so,
Great.
yes.
I just want to express my gratitude to you and this entire committee. I feel like I understand this so much better than I did a few years ago, and you spent some time actually on the phone with me, helping me understand it a few years ago. But I just think the work that this committee does is incredibly important. And your ability to translate it simply for us so that everybody can understand and appreciate what the risks and opportunities are, I just respect it and appreciate it so much. So thanks to you and the whole committee.
Oh, thank you very much.
I do think this is a much more comprehensive plan than many of our surrounding towns have.
For good or for bad.
I think for better. No question.
I don't, sorry.
Okay, I was just kind of wondering, you mentioned how like the Mallet Hall building, the North Pownell Station, like road station aren't like assets that are kind of covered or planned for in this plan. Is that a conversation that's being had, or is that something that we think we've thought about?
The committee has talked about it and we're aware that we don't have them in there. We're not quite sure how to include them because when was Mallet Hall built? I don't know, 100 years ago? When will we rebuild it? Another 100 years, 50 years, you know, we're not sure how to put it in. We have a future facility for public safety, public works in here. Put that in more as a placeholder and something to remember that that's coming. We certainly want to, well, let's use that project as an example. We want to capture, if we're going to go forward with a plan to build that facility, we want to capture in our plan the debt service to support that, even before it's built, so we can project that instead of all of it. We know, but if that building's going to be there for 50 years, well, then and we won't necessarily, it won't wear out over 50 years. You know, I don't know how to put a life on that. I mean, we would, but I don't know how you would put a life on that for the way we do this.
In the same way that you do like a machine.
Right, like a dump truck. We know that in 12 years, that's gonna not work anymore. The building through maintenance and repair, if it's taken care of, will last a lot more than its accounting life will be, like this building has. So we keep maintaining this properly, then it will last a long time. It's more likely to be refreshed as a building because the needs and services provided here outgrow the physical structure. But with those grants that we got, it brought to our attention that there are major equipment items within that building that need to be planned for, that are gonna be replaced long before that building is. Now, we do include the roof here, because the roof gets replaced more often than the building gets replaced. So we included that as a capital. We did do the painting early on, and I can't remember whether there's still some painting left. No, we've taken that all out.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, we've decided that that really belongs on the maintenance side, particularly. Well, we decided it's really maintenance, and we used to do like one side at a time, and we were trying to cover that in here, and it really wasn't working so well. So that's in the maintenance budget. The roof, the replacement of the roof, not repair, but the replacement of the roof would be a capital item that would go in here. Right now, I think we have whole building east side wish we would look at that as an entire roof. And we would probably do the same thing for the new building, because that's gonna, in the life of a building, you could replace the roof several times.
So I just want to say, Paul, that I appreciate your pondering the question of whether or not we're investing in our assets as demonstrated by your graph. I think this graph is going to become very important when we apply for any kind of grant funding for any new capital projects, because it indicates a relative fiscal health of the town. So I think your question is absolutely appropriate, but given the current situation of where the town is going in terms of making potentially two large investments, I love to see this chart the way it is. If I'm going to go to a potential grant giver, I'd like to be able to give them this.
Oh, definitely. It's, if we're close to doing a future facility, then this is looking just right.
Perfect.
Because our bonds are coming down, we have the financial capacity in town to add more bonds to the balance sheet. Up to a limit, but as opposed to if you're looking at the left side of the chart, you may still be good, but it's not as good as we are looking going forward.
It would be nice to be able to say that, the town has planned us to be in this position at this point in time in order to make the investment.
Certainly we did.
That's true. I agree with Donna that the work your committee does certainly makes this town function far more efficiently than it did 10 years ago. So I really appreciate all your work.
Thank you. It's a good group of people, and we actually, I think, had some fun this year with this, because the plan has gotten to the point with the TV where we can I have to get up close to see it, but apparently my younger members of the committee can sit back and see it. But we actually, this is the third iteration that we looked at last week, and we're able to do that in one meeting.
Great.
So it actually becomes fun trying to find the right combination of assumptions that gives us something that we feel works for the taxpayer, but also works for our responsibility as a committee.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
I want to move right to the undesignated fund balance. So just for the budget committee's information, every year, we typically do this right before town meeting, but it should be done right now, just since we have you all here. So please just follow along and don't ask questions until we get to the bottom of it. So right now, our undesignated fund balance, Becky.
Our audited balance as of June 30th last year was $2,459,375. The two previous years, it was around 2.1. We have historically pulled 300,000 for the CAP account, and we pulled 300,000 towards tax mill rate revenues. So that was 600,000 we pulled last year, and we did increase the balance slightly.
So for the budget committee's summation, we constrained by law, the threshold of.
I would round it to 1 million. It's 10% of our operating budget plus 2 months of payables. It's somewhere in the 900,000. So to make it easy, if we just keep 1 million in there as that base of what we have to keep.
Based on your projection, by the end of this fiscal year, we'll have around.
We currently have 1.4 million available. I don't know what the audited amount will be this coming June. Yeah, but.
So that it would be feasible to put in the warrant a similar transfer, 300,000 to the CAP fund, 300,000 to mitigate potential tax increase. What do you think, Mr. O'Brien?
I think we may want to wait until we hear the future facilities budget. Before we make a decision on that.
What the future facilities budget has to do with this, I'm not quite sure. Maybe you should be more specific.
I think they'll be asking for a sum of money for architectural, the full architectural design of the new facilities, which will be needed in order to go for grant opportunities.
That would have to come out of taxation or voted on in town meeting, right?
As would any appropriation from the undesignated fund
Okay,
balance.
what do you think? Would you like to wait to hear that?
When are we gonna be here then?
Andy, do you have an answer to that?
What's
When
that?
we hear-
When would we be hearing?
Tonight.
Tonight. It's on the agenda.
Wait for that. Thank you for that information, Becky. All right, next up. Public safety. Miss Chief Peters. Would you stick right here?
Yeah, why don't we switch? I'll sit there, so you can sit up here so people can hear you. Yeah, actually, I'll go over there.
I don't want him sitting next to me.
Thank you. Okay. I'm gonna jump right in. Everybody received the letter that I sent along with my budget presentation. All right, so I'm gonna go right to the first item, which is the public safety page. Is this one right here, Kate? So the first item there is the dispatch services from Cumberland County. That's a 3% contractual increase. We typically sign a 3-year contract with them, and I think we're in year 2 of that 3-year contract. Any questions on that one? Okay. EMS transport, that went up about almost $5,000 this year. What happened was Freeport has a brand new town manager, a brand new fire chief, and a brand new deputy chief. And when they found out how much we were paying, they wanted to start renegotiating. We don't have a contract with them. It's always been a handshake between the chiefs. And so when they found out what we were paying, they wanted to talk to us again. So Selectman O'Brien and I went over and had a discussion with them. They wanted more than what was in here now. We got them down to 400 based on 100 calls a year. But in that time period, from here to the next year, we're gonna start talking about what it's gonna look like moving forward. And they're gonna want a 3-year contract moving forward.
So I was wondering, like, so are we gonna have a contract?
Yeah, right now it's still a gentleman's handshake, between the chief and myself, and we agreed to the 400 per call. Yeah, we were paying $316 per call last year.
Becky?
Jesse, can you just say what that figure is? Because what I sent up from your last invoice or last email
It'd
is
be
the same.
40,000.
So it should be 40, okay.
That's what I have. Is that what you guys have?
No, because this was the last spreadsheet you sent me. For some reason, it still has the old figure, so that's why I wanted to have that updated one. Thank you.
What do you guys have? Yeah, that's the old spreadsheet.
So what was the,
The new,
40,000?
yep. Any other questions about that?
Just give me the before and after again.
So
What it is.
So it was $316 per call,
Uh-huh,
and it's going to 400 per call.
okay, thank you.
He wanted 500 per call. And I said, that's gonna kill us. So I talked him down to 400. It's a starting point.
Other towns that we've had.
There are other towns and we're gonna be talking to them. Really, the only other town near us that can handle it would be Yarmouth. Yeah. They have 2 ambulances and crews that are available to handle it. The other smaller towns like North Yarmouth, New Gloucester and Durham, they only have like 1 full-timer on during the day and only 1 ambulance. So if their ambulance is out, they're not gonna have an ambulance to send us. So we're gonna end up calling Freeport anyway. So. Okay, to the next page. I'm assuming that if you got the wrong spreadsheet up,
Yeah.
then all these numbers are gonna be different.
Just shout them out and I will fix them up, so that way we have that.
Okay. Insurance, increased to $725. Membership dues, 1,800. Everything may be the same now, because maybe the only difference was the transport services.
I think that's correct.
Okay. The cost of, so I had notes and we'd be able to see them if the screen was up, but the reason for the increase to the membership is, membership dues are going up for just about everything. NFPA, Coastal Mutual Aid, just to name a couple of them that have gone up. On the computer line, so for 2 years now, we've been with that company that I requested to move to. And we've been struggling to get it to work. Since then, the state has come out with a free version for fire reporting software. And so we decided we'll just go with the free version and not mess around with this company anymore. And the only issue is we won't be able to pull as much data as we were able to pull through that other service. But we're still able to do our run reports. We're still able to pull a lot of data. I'm still able to do payroll through it, and keep track of trading records and such. So any questions about that one? Cell phone stipend, I added that in this year. I use my cell phone daily. And office supplies, didn't change that. Any questions?
I just have a comment,
ahead.
just on the cell phone stipend, that is the same breakdown that we have in our personnel policy. So it's a $20 a month. We pay it out 4 times a year, quarterly. So that's where that figure came from.
The officer stipends, this is based on, the new officers that we have and the work they've been doing. They've been doing a good job with the tasks that I've delegated to them. And so I think they deserve a raise.
How many officers do we have?
3. The chief stipend, 20,000, the select board told me to put that there as a placeholder. Call pay. So two drivers here. Minimum wage goes up every year. So every year, the minimum wage goes up. We have to bump the firefighters and the EMTs up as well. Because their threshold is so close to minimum wage that if we didn't do that, eventually minimum wage would be more than what they're getting paid, so. The other driver is, there's more people showing up out on calls because we have a larger staff, except for at night. And then, the other thing is, our call volume keeps going up. This year was down a little bit from last year, but, this year seems to be, since January, seems to be a little bit heavier again, like it was 2 years ago. And one other thing that I talked with the select board about was some sort of, on-call pay or differential night pay to try to encourage people to come out at night. I'm still working on that program. I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna implement it. I looked at doing, like just an on-call stipend for two members, because I don't want to send somebody out by themselves at night. And we actually have people that says, I'm not going out by myself at night, and I don't blame them. Because, you know, it's a rural town, there's no streetlights, there's nothing, and you're going to a long driveway at the end of a, you know, dirt road, and you don't know what you're walking into, so. So I would only have it so that two people could go out at a time. And then I looked at it like a $30 stipend or something per person. And if every night got filled, it would be like $25,000, which to me felt like a big chunk of change to bite off all at once. So what I think what I'll do is I'll try the night differential pay thing to see if that helps improve nighttime response. If that doesn't work, then I'll switch to an on-call for certain nights during the week to see if we can get people to sign up for that.
So we don't have anything like this in place currently.
No. No, you get paid the same day or night.
No matter how many people are showing up.
Correct. Well, everybody has their own pay rate based on skill level and time in service. Certifications, qualifications.
So just for my own clarification, how is during the workshop, there was discussion about a stipend for EMTs? How does that relate to this?
That's
It's the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
That topic came up typically because at nighttime during, like if it is an EMS call at night, typically it's either me or one other person, going out by themselves.
On call, like you're
We're not really
you're
on
the
call.
on-call.
We're all on call all the time, but there's nobody on call. So the tone goes off, somebody's gotta go. And it's usually either me or my lieutenant.
There's no mandatory requirement.
Right.
So, Jesse is the bottom of the hill, so no one goes anywhere.
Yeah, okay.
We're trying to alleviate that.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Any other questions on that? Same thing with training. We've bumped we've bumped our roster up from like 13 to 27. And a lot of them are young and new and need a lot of training, so. And maintenance, same thing. Mileage, no change to mileage, because year to date, we've only paid out 711, so I think we'll be good with that. And FICA and Medicare are what they are. Any questions? Okay. All right. Apparatus maintenance. Operations.
I have buildings.
Oh, did I skip a page? I did, sorry.
Yeah, mine.
Thank you. So I didn't add buildings into my packet. So the town rent, I'm not sure what's going on with that. That hasn't been asked for yet by the church, Nope. Okay. It's increased based on, I looked up what the tax, amount due this year is, and that's what was due.
We rent it from the church.
We rent the lot, yeah. And then every other utility is going up based on what the current cost of is month times 12, so it's just, 6% on the telephone, 1% on the cable, 6% on North Pownell electricity, 2% on Center Station electricity, North Pownell heat up 4%. Center Station heat, we seem to be doing all right with that, but I didn't know where natural gas prices were gonna go, so I left it where it is. The alarm monitoring has been the same for the last few years, and they never indicated to me that they were increasing. And then, same thing I'm gonna maintain the line on janitorial and maintenance and repairs.
Are we not actually spending, I mean, it's only $200, but are we not actually spending that?
So we just did spend some, it's not showing up in here. So a few years back, I spent a bunch of money and I bought like a whole bunch of toilet paper, whole bunch of paper towels, and we're still using that stock up. And I just keep it there, it's a small amount, and I keep it there just in case we need to go out and buy something, like trash bags or whatever. Okay, any other questions on buildings? Thank you, Andy.
You're welcome.
All right, now on to operations. So the big increase here is on engine 2. It's a $10,000 increase. During pump testing this year, the evaluator discovered that the pump packing was leaking, and when he went to adjust it, he said it's at its limit of adjustment. So the pump packing, basically the bottom part of the pump, needs to be rebuilt. And it could be up to $10,000 to do that, and it's got to go up to Appleton to have it done. So the truck will be out of service for a while. But if we don't do that, then we won't have a pump to use on that truck, and it'll be just a big box carrying tools. So, I will say that was requested in capital projects several years ago during the engine 2 refurb, and it was cut against my recommendation. And now we're gonna have to pay for it now. Any questions on that? Okay. And then all the other ones, I'm just gonna hold the line on those.
Oh, I have a question on the pump. Does that mean the truck is out of commission now?
No, it's
Okay.
in commission, but it's leaking. Okay, so basically what the pump packing is where the drive shaft goes into the pump. And there's a packing that's around that, and every so often you have to tighten that packing down. Well, it's at the point where it can't be adjusted anymore. So what's gonna end up happening is over time, that leak's gonna get worse and worse and worse, to the point where it could actually cause the drive shaft to start rusting inside the pump. And then if that happens, then we're gonna be in worse trouble than we are now, so.
Mhm.
So we need to rebuild it now before it actually fails, and we don't want it to fail when somebody's dependent on it.
Yep, definitely. Thank you.
It's a good question.
Do we have to prepare like a backup while it's in Appleton?
No, what I'll do is I'll notify dispatch and have them add an out-of-town truck during that time period. It's not the first time we've had a truck out of service. Engine 2 went out of service for its refurb a few years back, and it was out for, I think, 4 weeks. Radio maintenance and repairs, I lowered that a little bit, and the reason being is because of the communication upgrade that we just did. Most of our equipment's fairly new, so we shouldn't have to do a lot of repairs on it. So I've lowered that this year to try to help a little bit. Pagers, I've kept the same. Batteries, I increased, it seems like the cost of batteries is going up and, the pager batteries, seem to be failing quicker, so. And I think a lot of it is where they're made and what they're made with, so. Any questions on that one? Okay. Basically holding the line on equipment maintenance and repairs till you get down to extinguishers. I lowered that quite a bit. I'm not sure what happened in 2024. I'm not sure if they billed me for the town hall and remember that kerfuffle with them, they couldn't straighten out the bill between us and town hall and yeah, so it was like a big mess, so. If you look at that 800 is closer in line with what it's always been.
Uh-huh.
And as you can see, year to date, we've spent 524 and we've already had our extinguishers serviced. And then hose and ladder testing. And you probably saw this in my notes. Maine Bureau of Labor is now requiring us to test all our forestry hose. We never had to test it before. So we've gone and pretty much doubled what we have to test for hose. So the price is pretty much doubled. It's gone up quite a bit, so, any questions on that?
You said that's to test forestry hose?
Yeah, so it's, that line is for all the hose, but we never had to test our forestry hose before. We just, because it wasn't used for interior firefighting, we never tested it. And a lot of it's weeping fire hose, so it actually weeps water through it to keep it from getting burnt while you're dragging it through the woods. But now Maine Bureau of Labor is requiring us to test it.
Didn't give you any rational justification.
Because it says it in NFPA.
Rational.
That was their justification.
They didn't pay for it.
Of course not. No, and I argued, I pushed back on it and I said, look, this is,
How do you suppose that by its nature, please?
well, they know it's weeping, so the agency that's gonna test it is gonna say, okay, it is weeping fire hose. They're not gonna fail it for that, but they will fail it if a coupling fails or the hose bursts or something like that. But they pressure tested at a rate that we're never gonna pump it at. So, whereas the fire attack hose is tested, at a rate slightly above where we would normally. Also included that is ladder testing. Bureau of Labor told me I was doing it every other year or every third year. Bureau of Labor told me I have to do it every year. So that includes that as well.
That we send the elephant up to the top.
Mhm. Any questions on that? Good. Diesel and gasoline, no changes there. Training facility, the reason I cut that out is because that's now included in the membership fees for Coastal Mutual Aid. It used to be broken out, but now it's all part of it. You pay your membership fee and you get to use the facility. And training tuition I increased because we have more people wanting to go to more classes. And I really hate to tell people they can't go to training, so. Any questions on that? Okay. Fire prevention, I cut that down a little bit. Typically, as you can see, we've been spending right around, less than 700, $600 to $500 a year. So I cut it down to 600. And I think that has a lot to do with the population of the school. What we do with that money is we'll buy fire prevention kits for the kids at school. And, if the school population's down, then we don't need as many kids. It's typically been right around 100 kids in the past few years. And I think in the past, in the further past, it was up around 120, 130, so. We also buy, smoke detectors for, folks who can't, we keep them on the trucks, and if we go to somebody's house and we notice that they don't have smoke detectors, we'll say, hey, do you have a smoke detector? No, I can't afford one, so we'll put one up for 'em. Firefighter and EMS gear, I'm asking for an increase in that of 5,000. We have spent, more than the 8240, because since this went out, I've submitted another bill for a couple helmets. Quite a bit of our gear is starting to reach that 10-year cycle where it needs to be recycled into spare gear or just be thrown away depending on its condition. And we have quite a few new people that, they're going through the firefighter programs and stuff, and they need good dependable gear. Any questions on that, anybody? Hazmat. I asked for, to bump that up to 900. We need to buy a gas meter for engine 2. The 2 gas meters that we had prior, both through a sensor that we can no longer get. So we purchased one already. That was the 811. And I need to purchase another one. So both of those are out of service. So at least we have one working 4-gas meter. But we really should have 2, one on each engine. And those are used when we go to a CO call, a gas call, and even at a structure fire, we'll take them in afterwards to make sure that the air is clean enough for us to take our masks off. Fit testing, I cut that down. This shows 0 because for the past 2 years, we've had it done in North Yarmouth, and I keep asking the chief of North Yarmouth to send me a bill, and he never does, so. But someday he might. Right now, it's working out pretty good for us, so. Let's see, what else we got? Any questions on that, in that line, the health and safety side?
I just have a question about accountability and ID tags. It looks like that one has been zeroed out. Is there a particular reason for that?
Yeah, because as you look, we don't spend the money every year on that. I'm probably gonna buy some this year. What it is those are accountability tags that they're little name tags, Velcro tags that they keep in their helmets. And they put them on the trucks when they get on the truck, and then the officer of the truck brings that to me, and I put it on a board, and I keep track of who's on what truck and what they're doing. That's what that's all about.
With new people?
With new people, I gotta buy more tags, and they're fairly cheap. But it's not a line, I can usually find, we could probably just take that right out. If we're not, I could probably put it somewhere else, like in administration or something. Right? And these are the things that Becky and I have talked about things that if we're not spending it on it every year, maybe it can go somewhere else and we can get rid of some of these lines that we don't need. Okay. Anything else on that one? Okay. Medical supplies, basically the increase is the 1750 is for one AED. All our AEDs are aging out. Does anyone not know what an AED is? Okay, good. It's. Oh, you don't? I thought you said yes. Oh, it's an automatic external defibrillator. It's for work, you put it on you and it shocks you. Well, no, not for fun, only when you're having a heart attack. Yeah.
The dog's collars for
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have one on, pretty much, we were one on 3 of our trucks, so we have 3 on the trucks. I have one, my lieutenant has one, and I have a couple that are out of service and useless now because they've thrown an error code that, when you go to look it up, it says this is unserviceable, time to replace it. So, and they're all getting to be like 12, 15 years old, so. I'm probably gonna keep that in there every year moving forward, so we can start replacing them. So that we don't end up with needing to replace 6 of them all at once. And that includes the one downstairs. That one's aging out eventually too.
We just replaced the battery.
Yeah,
One, too.
yeah. Any questions on that one? Okay. Hose nozzles and adapters, so I'm asking for $5,000 to purchase a second Blitz fire gun. It's a ground water cannon, basically. You set it up, it takes 2 people to set it up, and then 1 person can stay there, or actually, nobody needs to stay there. You could actually set it up and move away from it. And if it gets knocked around or something, it shuts off by itself. So it's not a danger to anybody. We purchased one a few years back. And it came in handy when we had the fire on the Merrill Road. And at that time afterwards, one of the things that we talked about is we could have really used 2 of them. So, I'm asking for a second one, which will go on engine 2. Yeah, so, it's a nozzle about this long, it sits on the ground. And we can aim it in different directions and flow water onto the fire without having to have somebody right on top of it. Or 2 people, actually. It would have to take 2 people to deploy a regular one, which we don't even have one of those, so.
You would be like pulling water from a pond or something?
No, it would come right off the truck. So, and wherever that water to the truck is coming from. But yeah,
But they're capable of flowing up to 500 gallons a minute, so it's a quick deluge.
um. And I think that's it. And then the last page is everything. For the total, and I know this is a hard pill to swallow, but it's a 22.808% increase.
Jesse, can you tell me what your FY 26 sheet says, just because I don't think I have the updated one here?
Yeah, it
public
would be the
safety, is it
public safety,
Public safety, yeah.
53,743.
I just make sure it's on here for the recording. Thank you.
Does it add up now?
It transferred right through.
And so what is the correct percentage?
22.08.
I'll resend this out again, just so you have it.
Yeah, that line. This is the correct ones. Any other questions for
Chief Peters on the public safety budget?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks for the pre-read also. That was very helpful.
Say it again.
Thank you for this in advance. That was very helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah. Thanks for giving up your seat.
All right, next, committee is the future facilities budget request.
Compensation?
Oh, I'm
You wanna do
sorry.
compensation?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Excuse me.
I mean, we can skip if you want.
No. I
Okay.
just thought we had done this line. Next is the compensation. Becky.
So we'll just go over everything we updated from the workshop. So the first line is for the full-time deputy clerk, at 52,692. That represents a 6% increase, 4% COLA with a 2% merit increase. Any questions?
We did the compensation. Oh, no, we didn't.
What's that? Okay. Time changing.
Yeah.
Next line is the town administrator salary line. And I'm sorry, just to go back to the deputy clerk, that also includes overtime for things like election and town meeting. Next line is the town administrator at 77,620. This is a labor market adjustment after the select board did some research with MMA salary survey and had a discussion earlier in the workshop. That was the figure that they came up with. That's a 15% increase over last year, or $10,000. Questions?
That also still so it's not based off of 4% COLA and merit, it's based off of the market, the research that went into it.
Correct. Yes.
And that's still slightly lower than the nearest.
Like looking at like other towns and other similar
why-
job positions.
Yeah.
and all that.
So why don't we have a number that's slightly lower?
It's slightly lower, not by $1,000, but it's slightly lower. I think the nearest one was 78,000.
I think that's,
So,
So just let me ask again, why did we go with 78?
We've adjusted the office personnel to add another person. We're just trying to, in a very volunteer, amateur way, try to make it right with some of the conversations we didn't do the previous year. Doing it right.
yep. Next line is the part-time clerk. This is a new position. It's an up to 27-hour-a-week position. It might fluctuate with a little bit more hours some weeks and a little bit less others, depending on how busy. It's to help support the office staff. I will make mention, in 2021, when I took the job, there have now been 5 new programs that have come online that the municipalities, and not just us, all municipalities in the state have to monitor, and it does add more time and work. The biggest one is most recently, dog registrations went to an online. So initially, when you came in to register your dog, it probably took about 5 minutes. It now takes us 15 and upwards of 20 in this new online system. And then we still have to put it into the cash receipting system because they don't talk to each other. So that just adds more time away from, the other work that needs to get done, more time at the counter. So this is to help support, the multitude of programs that are coming online for us to manage and monitor. Questions about that line?
We have someone doing that.
We've had someone helping us right now, on a temporary basis, but we have been interviewing. We don't have someone hired yet, but we're close. Okay. Next is the CEO. So with a discussion at the workshop, the select board have put that into a 40-hour-a-week position. It is at 36 hours now, with 62,000 being the marker for that salary. That is another sort of adjustment to the growing work and the labor market. Questions? The town planner is a placeholder right now. We have some more discussions that we need to have about that one, so we'll update you as that happens.
Just clarification.
Sure.
So on the CEO, is it just did you say there's also been sort of an MMA review of that position, or is it just going from the 36 to 40 hours?
It's a little bit of both. 36 to 40, but then also just looking at what the trends are and making sure we're in the market. And if I'm wrong, please, jump in on it.
Two people sharing the office, one person. And the idea is just to get an idea. We've never had, so we don't really. So we'll make adjustments as the years go on.
Yeah.
So the market, really the market analysis of positions hit that market.
The next one is our information officer. That one has an 11% increase because she had a 90-day review with an adjustment to her wage just recently. And so then that's based off that. So then this 12,130 figure really represents the 4% plus the 2%. I've already done her eval back in January. She is an up to 10-hour-a-week position, mostly remote, but she's in charge of updating the website, the Facebook page, the constant contact, doing all that, and then helping with the AV equipment when needed. Questions there? Ballot clerks has a $300 increase up to $1,500. I learned at a recent training that we do have to pay everybody, and we are so grateful for our ballot clerks that we have, and many of them volunteer their time, but by law actually have to pay them. So I had to increase the line a little bit more to make sure that we're covering that compensation. ZBA secretary, holding at 500, that support to our zoning board of appeals when they might need to do something. So far, they have not had any appeals this year. The recording secretaries for the planning board. So we do have someone hired on staff that does their minutes for them. We have not increased her pay in the last couple of years. So the $200 increase is to increase her to $20 an hour and give her that pay increase. Questions about the recording secretary? Your sheets are gonna be a little different from what I'm telling you because we did some changes in the workshop at 5:30. So I'm gonna resend it. Yeah, so we had a workshop at 5:30. So what I printed this morning is a little different because we have made some changes. So I'll resend it out to you tomorrow. Yes,
So it would be 2,200.
correct. Yes. Sorry, I'll be more clear on those ones I know we made adjustments to.
To CEO. It's not gonna be 41,019.
That's the year to date right now. It's gonna be 62 as proposed. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll resend it to you, Jennifer.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. I can hear you, but I also.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, planning board stipends is at 4,000. It did have an extra 500 built in case the select board chose to pay alternates. They have discussed about paying the alternates $250 a person because they do come to the meetings and do the work as well. Questions about planning board stipends? Yes, yeah. There was, yeah, so we had that extra money to do it. They have made the decision to now allocate that money for that. Mileage, the current rate is 70 cents. This year, it does typically go up 2 to 3 cents in January. We follow the IRS rate. I have increased that to 3,800, really just kind of, making my best guesstimate. As I said in the workshop, for the office staff, a lot of the trainings have gone to a hybrid of Zoom and in person, so we have our choice, which has helped. But this also includes mileage for CEO, town planner, bank runs, more than just training. Questions about mileage? Okay. Select board stipend will be discussed next Monday. That is a budget committee oversight, so they'll be doing that at their meeting next Monday at 6:30. Right now, the 17,194 represents a 4% COLA increase. Discussions last year talked about continuing with COLA and reevaluating that every 3 years to make sure that they're keeping up with trends. So that's the discussion that budget committee will have next week. Our assessor, she is a subcontractor. Her rate is 1,600 a month, so that's 19,200. No change there. I am gonna 100% verify tomorrow when Donna's in the office, but I don't expect any change on that one. Questions about our assessor? Our animal control officer has a 4% increase, so that is at 6,334 this year. That's based on the COLA increase. Questions about the ACO line? Deputy ACO is at 500 and Oh, sorry, I'm like, why is it saying public information officer? I forgot I was on her computer. There was discussion with the select board at the workshop about doing a 4% increase on that line. I just haven't done the math on that, so that will be something I'll resend out to you. That's my note to remind me to do that. Animal control officer. Yeah. So that person fills in when our animal control officer is away on vacation or not able to perform the duties. And then training for animal control officers set at 100. Some of the trainings, because they're required by the state, are free, and then there are additional trainings. So we'll make sure we support that training. Questions? Okay, training line, I have held it the same as last year. It does have built-in money, $600 for the planner conference, $700 for the town administrator conference, and $300 for a CEO conference. These are requests that happened last year and were attended to. It also then includes the training for all office staff. Again, where some of the trainings are provided free because they're mandatory, it helps keep our costs down on that training. Questions on training? Okay. So the next two lines, FICA and Medicare, are formula based on the rate we have to pay. So right now our FICA is at $25,587. It has a 40% increase from last year for two reasons. First of all, my formula was a little off last year and I realized that. So I fixed that. There was a couple of boxes that weren't included in the line last year that should have been. And then there's just been some increases in some of the wage expenditures. So those two lines, and those two might, change if the select board, after final discussions makes any adjustments to those other wage categories. And I will keep you all informed, budget committee, on that. The paid family medical leave law, so quick recap on that. Last year, we thought we, as employers, were going to have to put in 0.5%, employees put in half. The law has changed or been defined better, and we are not required, so that is not being budgeted now, and that's this next fiscal year. So that is a 100% decrease, or 720, or 791 less dollars. Questions on the family medical leave? Unemployment rates did go up. Now that we're actually having unemployment audits, we're able to see the trend. 3 of the categories are based on the first $25,000 that everybody makes of gross wages. And then the top, one of the rates that is not subject to that. As you can see from last year, or this current year, we're a little above last year, but I think now that we're getting into a good audit and time frame at 4,700. We're going to be in much better position in covering that unemployment cost based on the employees that we have on hand. And that includes everything. That's fire department, public works, office staff. Questions on unemployment? ICMA, or Mission Square as it's called now, that is the retirement plan for those in the town that participate. The town puts in 6%. So that is another formula based on the wages that apply. So if there is any changes, that one might change. That one actually has a slight decrease over last year. I think it was really just fine tuning my formula a little bit better.
You said based off of the most people participate, or does that change from year to year?
It depends on if it's level 1 or level 2. So if you're a level 1 employee, 36 hours or more, then the town puts in 6%. If you're a level 2, you can participate on your own, but the town does not put in that. So this is just based on the ones that qualify for the level 1 plan. And then the health insurance line. So this is budgeted at 2 family plans, 2 single plans, plus 1 health insurance buyout, which I'll explain in a second. Health insurance had a 9% increase this year. So the first 6 months is actuals. And then the next 6 months, I am estimating 6% for next year in hopes that I'm close. The 2 family, 2 single is just making sure if an office staff moved on and we hired, that we have the ability to pay for a family plan, based on our personnel policy there. The buyout is if we have an employee who qualifies for the health insurance, but gets it maybe through their spouse or another plan, then the town pays 25% of the annual premium to them in lieu of the benefit. And so we pay that out 4 times a year. So that includes one buyout in that, which I have at the moment. So I haven't done like the percentages of over and dollar amounts on the side because this was still a work in progress. But that puts the general government at 492,824 as it stands right now. 492,824. Any other questions on general government compensation before we move on? Okay. We have Public Works. Matt, did you want to talk about your Public Works compensation, or you want me to kind of go through it and you chime in if I?
If they have any questions.
Okay, okay. So the way my next section is just for formula based, that top line is sort of adding all the single lines together. So I'm actually going to jump down to line 2, Highway 1. And start from there. So this is one of our Public Works crew. This represents an 8% increase because they are a new employee, had a 90-day eval and a wage adjustment based on that. So that's part of that increase. And then it's budgeted at the 4% COLA plus the 2% merit. Right, great. Questions on that budget line? So that puts it at $24.91 an hour. Coming into July 1. The next line is the road commissioner. This is another labor market adjustment line. The select board had a workshop earlier and discussed this line. They have set that at 75,000. That is a 9% increase or 6,330. They are also going to be discussing over the next year, looking at hourly compensation and gathering data and reanalyzing that line. So more.
I have a question on this.
Sure.
So a position like commissioner position, that can be an hourly? There is a choice to make that hourly?
It was for a long time, and then we decided to go salary with this hire.
Okay, and my second question is, so I don't want to say this diplomatically, but we must know now, we must have some idea of overtime and right, I mean what are we gonna gain? What are we gonna learn if we postpone making the decision for a year? We must have some information on this now. I get that it's a tough decision, but I think I'm asking because I just think we have to, and I know you all agree, we have to be like really equitable and we have to make sure that when we have talented people that we're really compensating them the way they deserve to be compensated. And I'm not questioning that
No.
the select board has any other mode, but I think this is an interesting case where it could be hourly, it could be salary.
That's why we're gonna take whole year, because the hours change year to year. The hours change now because we have a full complement of a road crew. So now I think we have a department moving forward that is, the hours are gonna be more reliable. I think the commissioner thinks that we have a full complement of workers. This year we're gonna look at, so if he should come in, work 80 hours, well, that's not fair. So we just want to try to generate some understanding.
Okay, so that makes sense to me, right? So it's a
With
different,
that- with the road
different
commissioner's
team,
input. We
right?
want
Full team. Right.
road commissioner to have input and to just come up with a situation that's more based on reliable information.
Okay, I get you. That makes sense to me because it is a different size group. Does it have to take a full year?
Well,
There's a lot of seasonal issues there.
Like in less than a year?
We'll do it as fast as we can.
Well, could you're saying we need data, right? We need. access.
Right, and there's a lot of seasonal data that belongs in
Okay,
there.
okay, I get that. Okay, great. Thanks for the answers.
I think it's important to look at the trend. Now, last winter wasn't quite as harsh as this winter has been as far as like the traditional snowstorms. And I think it's important to look at that average too, to just make sure, because with winter, we never know, really what's gonna happen. The other piece is they also did do the MMA salary survey with this and looked at relevant towns, as well. So they're really going kind of at all directions at looking at the data and coming up with what makes most sense.
Okay, so at least for this year, based on the MMA salary survey, you're feeling good with this. This is a good number.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thanks for taking my question.
How big is a full crew? Like, how many people is the crew?
4.5.
It's the road commissioner, 3 full-time and 1 part-time. All right, absolutely. So Highway 3, again, was a new hire. After the 90-day eval had an increase in pay, so they have an 8% increase, again, based on that 90-day eval, then the 4% COLA and the potential 2% merit-based one. So that one puts it at 51,813, and it's 24.91 per hour. Questions on Highway 3? Final one is the Public Works mechanic. That one is at a 6%, for COLA 2%, puts it at $26 an hour, $54,080. And these are the base pays. The overtime is a separate line, kind of one bucket, which we're getting to. So this is their base pay at 40 hours. Questions on that?
So what's the hourly rate for the 54 for the mechanic?
26 even.
And are those salaried positions?
Those are hourly. Yes. So that's where the overtime will come in a line or two. Then we have a part-time person. So that is again a 6% increase, 4% COLA, 2% merit. That puts our part-time at 24.97. That's about a 20-hour a week or as needed. It's more so in the winter, and then in the summer when they need flaggers. The crew of 3 and the road commissioner made that difficult. So adding that part-time person has given us the flexibility to not have to hire, out from other towns. Question on the part-time. Right. Have I missed any points, Matt? Am I good?
No.
Okay. It's like, no, keep going. So then we get to overtime. So Matt and I sat down last week and we really looked at the overtime and, what the pay rates were going to look like. And we increased that by 8% or $1,500. So the overtime line is at 21,500. We're currently not including today's payroll at 11,747 spent out of the 20,000 budgeted this year. So we're kind of in line so far with that line. Again, not knowing what winter is going to hold each year. It's a little bit of a guessing, best educated guess. Questions on overtime?
I feel like some of the questions that I have are to figure out where that, like the context around a number. So like this question is the overtime, is the opportunity, is there equal kind of opportunity between the positions in this crew for overtime, or is that overtime mostly like specific position?
No, it's pretty equal. Actually, go ahead,
So
Matt.
the way, like, is broke down in the census, especially in the winter. Our overtime usually comes from the winter operations, those kinds of plow roads, stuff like that. Myself and the 3 main employees, full-time employees, they all have routes that they do in a sense. So when we come in for overtime opportunities, they all have a specific truck and a specific route that they're doing. There might be an occasion where, we have to go out and help the fire department move a tree, or we have, an issue like that. And that kind of just goes to, I do like a rotating schedule. So if I call one, then typically the next time I'll try to call the other one, as long as they're available. But for overtime wise, we don't really do like a rolling schedule. if we have to go in, I call them all out and we all go at the same time.
Thank you.
And the part-time position is similar, but they're not, obviously, they don't come in every time, just when they need it.
So the next line is relief drivers. That has been reduced by $1,000 down to 2,450. Mostly because we now have that part-time position. So we have someone sort of on regular rotation to be able to come in and help. But if we really had a storm, a 2-day storm and things like that, we wanted the ability to be able to call some extra people in. And then we're down to FICA and Medicare again, based off the wages, right there. ICMA, that's based off their wages. And then finally, their health insurance. This has two single, 2 family plans plus buyout, very similar to what we did with general government. So for that, it is a 10% increase or 37,863 over last year. Any other questions on public works compensation? Okay. The fire department, Jesse kind of went over that. Okay, so we don't have any further questions on the fire department compensation. I'm going to skip that section. Okay. Human services and cemetery, we did kind of go over in previous ones, but just to recap, the $1,500 is for our health officer and our deputy health officer. The health officer is $1,000 and the deputy is $500. It's a stipend once a year that we pay. We are required to have one or both. And so we do stipend them for pay.
Actually, I do have a question. Is the chief stipend increase, was that handled the same way through doing a comparison?
I believe so, right? Yes. Okay. And then the cemetery wages, again, is reflective of having an actual crew doing the actual, work, the mowing and the tree removal, limb removal, weeds, things like that. And to try to keep from me having to pull too much from their general fund each year to compensate any overage, we just really readjusted to actual wages. So that one had a $2,000 increase over last year. Questions on compensation?
No, I would just add though that I know I was pushing on the road commissioner compensation and how we were making that decision, but I do want to say to the select board, I really appreciate that you're doing this kind of MMA type analysis with these really essential key roles so that we can recognize people, retain them. So I don't want you to think I don't appreciate that because I know it's hard work and I really do appreciate it. So
Okay, if there's no other questions about compensation, Becky, let's do revenue.
Revenues, okay. Cable fees held steady at 12,000. If you look at our trend, we pretty much are between 11 and 12,000 for collection, so it seemed relevant. They usually do give me a letter ahead of time when I know the money's coming. So in January, we got the letter that said we were getting 11,341, so we were very close on that. Questions on cable fees? Auto excise, I have increased that to 330,000, which is a $15,000 increase. Continue to watch the trends. MSRPs are continuing to rise, replacing aged out vehicles that are at their lowest mill rate. This is an 80% projection based on actual collection. I never go the full amount. You can see in 2024, we actually collected 431,000. By the end of the year, we budgeted 290. Currently, we have collected, as of last week, 306,000. Actually, let me make that comment. These revenue collections are as of March 3rd, so last Monday. We budgeted 315,000. We've collected 306 as of a week ago. So we are on target to be slightly over. But I never want to use 100% of actuals just in case the auto industry drops out and, it could happen. Loans, interest rates, all of that factors into what we see for new vehicles that come across. Questions on auto excise? Right. Boat excise held the same. We really come into our big collection in the spring, so that we're just starting to do boats now. People have spring fever and they were coming in and actually registering today. Ice out soon. Questions on boat excise? Town fees, that is the dollar that we collect for every dog registration we do. So you can see we do roughly maybe about 280 dog registrations a year right there. So I just held that steady at 300. IF&W agent fees, so when we do ATV or hunting and fishing license, we collect either $1 or $2 per transaction. I've kept that steady at 600. We seem to be pretty close between 500 and 700 for the last few years. Clerk fees, I did reduce that one down a little bit. Just looking at the trend, it looked like we were a little bit under, so I wanted to reflect actual. So I reduced down to 150 or $30, not a big reduction. Any questions there? Actually, I misspoke. The town fees is the $2 that we collect on the animal registrations. The clerk fees is the $1, so we do about 150 dogs, sorry. Correct
I
that.
think we have more dogs than that.
We probably do. Vital records fees kept at $1,200. Right now, we've currently collected $1,217, and that's the fee that we get to keep for every birth certificate, marriage license, marriage intentions, or death certificate that we issue in town. I expect that trend to still stay a little high with the Real ID enforcement looming in a couple of months. I think we'll see a little bit run on birth certificates and marriage licenses because you'll need those, to get the Real ID. Revenue sharing, state provides projections. I kept it the same because their projection was the same. This is 80% of their projection at 181,000. There was some talk in the projections that they expect it to decrease in the next year or two. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on that for next year. That is money that we get from the state. It's the share of the sales tax that's collected, and it's funded at 5%. So 5% of whatever is collected in sales tax is then divided amongst municipalities based on population and evaluation or valuation. Questions on rev share? Copy fax fee, kept it at 100. That's just if we do copies or sends faxes for residents. Be simple. Homestead, so if you have a homestead exemption on your property, it's reducing your tax liability by a certain dollar amount. The state then reimburses us. I sat and talked with Donna a couple of weeks ago about what she felt that was going to look like, and she felt like homestead was going to drop, and her figure recommendation was 107,000, which is an 11% drop over last year, or a 13,000% drop. It's based on our ratio, our market ratio as well, which this year is at 76% right now. And then the same with veterans. We actually were a little under collected this year in veterans, so she reduced that down to 750, which is a $250 reduction. And again, based on the same parameters of the homestead, how many applicants we have, what our ratio is. Lien costs, I did reduce, which is actually a really good thing because it means I'm doing a little bit less on the liens, or they're getting paid a little quicker even if they are liened. So I reduced that by 400 to be a little more reflective of the actuals of the last couple of years. It's a line I actually like to reduce, so I'm happy to see that one go down. Questions on lien costs? Real estate interest, so again, that's interest collected on tax payments that are past due. I have held it the same. I don't know what the percentage is that we're going to be collecting in this upcoming year. I think it's going to be close. We're at 8.5% in this current year. The state sets the maximum amounts and they just haven't come out with it yet. So I'm kind of going on an educated guess that it'll be similar at this point. Questions on real estate interest? Motor vehicle agent, again, as we perform registrations, we collect an agent fee, holding that steady at 7,500, same as last year. Questions on agent fee? Park fees, so we get a little bit of money from Bradbury Mountain State Park based on attendance. They're also one that usually gives me a letter in January telling me when the money's coming. We budgeted 2,500 last year and we got 3,641 this year, so that was good. So I bumped it up a little bit to 3,000. With things going on over there, they might see an increase in traffic over there, which means we get a little bit more money from that. Questions on park fees? It's a $500 increase. CEO permits, I have increased by 2,000, so that is at 20,000, and that is money collected for building permits, electrical permits, plumbing permits, et cetera, things like that. Just seeing the trend of going upwards, the record keeping, going very well in the office. Questions on CEO permits? We're almost through, guys. We're almost through. Board of Appeals fees, so I just kept it at 150 because honestly, we never know, if we're going to have anything or not. So most Board of Appeals applications are 300, but some of that goes to postage and advertisement too. So it's sort of split. We have not had any at this point this year. Questions on Board of Appeals fees? Checking interest. I kept it the same. We don't really know what's going to happen with interest fees. We have been doing well the last couple of years on our general fund in the checking. We are currently at 40,957. I still need to add last month's interest in. We had budgeted 25, but I don't want to move that one because I just don't know what's going to happen in the coming months or year. So I held that the same. So overall revenues projected are up by 1% or 3,820 over last year. Questions about the general revenues? So then we get into animal control officer revenues. So fees would be if there was any citations. A lot of times we don't have any, but we do put that in there just in case. So I kept it, actually I reduced it, sorry, up to 150 from 300, just because we haven't had any citations in the last few years. Questions about the ACO fees? The late fees are the $25 we collect starting on February 1st for dog registrations that are past due. That money stays in the town. It is a fee set by the state. Currently, we actually had another one today, so we're actually at 150 for collection, and that's what we budgeted last year. I bumped it up because we seem to have some late stragglers, and I expect that revenue to increase over the next couple of months. Questions on the late fee? Subdivision app fees. This one's a tough one sometimes because we never know when we're going to get a subdivision application through the planning board. So currently we just received one at $3,000, but you can see in your trend in years past, we really hadn't had any. So I just kept it at the 300. Questions on subdivision app fees? So that one's a flat, that one just remains, oh, I'm sorry, that one actually did have a reduction. I didn't do my math correctly there. $250 reduction. I'll fix that, send it out. Road assistance, that's money from the state. They don't really give us projections. Right now, I've been holding it at 36,000. Last couple of years, it's been trending towards 40. We'll see what happens this year and then reevaluate. Questions on road assistance? And then miscellaneous. So the 5,500 really comes from a fund balance. That's for the senior property tax assistance program that Pownell does in the fall. And so that can fund up to $500 to those that qualify to help with their taxes. And that's a fund balance, but we still vote on it every year. Ballot hall rental, that's actually ticking upwards. So I did increase it by $50. We currently have collected $755 in rental fees. We just got the Scouts are now renting regularly. So, and having their once a month meetings here, the open mic nights, the potluck dinners, all those things that are starting to get really well attended and happening monthly are making a difference in that revenue collection and the use of Mallet Hall. Questions on the rental? Pay as you throw, 0, as that program is not currently in progress. And then metal sales, I actually reduced this one by 100 because last year we broke even. So the goal of the metal collection day, which is May 3rd this year, and I all should have got your nice golden flyer in the mail last week. If you haven't, it's coming. Post office will get it there. And so really the cost that we get or the refund we get on the metal is really to pay for the dumpsters, so to speak. So it's really more of a break even, maybe a little surplus in the end. We didn't have a lot of metal last year. And so the $400 that we expected to collect was really spent out in the dumpster rentals at the same time, and it was a break even. So that revenue line does have a $26,000 reduction. I gotta fix that. So, no, it is 26,000 or 81%, mostly because of the pay as you throw. Questions on the miscellaneous? And I am done at this point.
Any questions? Becky, I have to say that, I really respected the amount of work we do on this budget. Thinking when we leave hours in November and December in your absence, how difficult all the hard work put into it to make it work and make it understandable for everybody. So.
Thank you. I think sometimes explaining it to you helps me understand it too.
So, anything more budget preparation?
So we have two committees here that would probably be relevant for the budget committee to hear their requests before they adjourn to have their meeting.
So that next item would be future facilities budget.
So, I'm Susan Peters, I'm the chair of the Future Facilities Group 2. I really say I'm the organizer because I have tons of experts who are actually doing the committee. Could you just raise your hands, please, for those who are on the committee so that, and Andy. And Kyler is going to come up and chat with you about our budget request for this year.
You can.
Yeah.
Come right ahead.
You can sit down if you'd like.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm up here is because I drew the short straw. Actually, I'm an architect, so I have a little bit of experience with architect's fees, although my experience is not current. I brought with me, you can pass those down. Andy, you've seen them.
I have seen that.
You and I will share that.
Do you need a copy?
I've got one here. Though. I think the way it's worded is that we're requesting up to $500,000. And I think it worthwhile to drill down a little deeper than that. What we have is a building whose total costs are estimated at $5.8 million. And in an email that you don't have access to, oh, I know where it is. Well, in an email that was sent out to Susan, a couple weeks ago, Andrew Highland of, Port City Architects stated that number, $6.5 million, includes design, permitting, furnishings, et cetera, for a turnkey project. So that 6.5, or that $5.5 million is supposed to be for the whole thing.
And what is the number? It's 5.5?
That is what I get out of the needs report. 5.5 million, yeah. Now, in order to arrive at a fee, by the way, I have emailed Andrew and asked him to provide me with a breakout of that amount. And I only did that this morning. He hasn't had a chance to respond. But one way we can get a little closer to a realistic figure is to kind of back out. You look like you got a question?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I
So-
always look like I've got a question.
I usually look confused. So we take that 5.5 million and back a few things out in order to arrive at a construction cost. First of all, we are going to back out what he calls furnishings, et cetera. That's traditionally called furnishings, fixtures, furnishings and equipment. That number is usually about 10% of the total construction cost. So if you take the 5 point, I've got it written on the back of this. If you take that, wait, I'm sorry, let's round up. Let's call it $6 million, just round figures. If you take a $6 million total fee and figure $600,000 for furniture, fixtures and equipment, FF&E, you get a total construction cost of $5,400,000. Now, let's take a look at what I passed out. This is, if you look, there's cost of construction and then what they call basic percentage fees in building complexity group. That should be headlined by architect's fees. All right, so that's what we're looking at. And you can see what I highlighted. I highlighted a building in the $5 to $6 million range, calling it medium complexity. You follow that down and you get a fee of 6.3%, which I'm not comfortable with. I don't think that's high enough. I'm working on it. I will get, more comfort. I will arrive at a figure that I'm more comfortable with, but that's what we're looking at as a basic. But if you take that 7.3%, you take $5,400,000 and work on 7.3%, you get a design fee of $394,200. So it is clearly well under the $500,000 that we're asking up to. And we will get back to you when we have a harder figure. But
Can you say that number again?
$394,200. That's just taking 7.3% of the $5,400,000.
Well, I have the obvious question. Do you anticipate it? Because you're an architect. So the town would need to vote to approve the money. So the presumption of the committee is that the town will approve the money to build this facility. Unfortunately, that needs to go before a town meeting. So you're suggesting to introduce it after, present the total funding for the building? Because you couldn't really approve this without having approval of the funding of the building. All right, you're talking about a procedural matter that I have no expertise in whatsoever. Just trying to give you a roadmap to how the municipal government's going to have to work. We would have to, in order, from my perspective, Becky, or anyone else, help me out here. In order to approve an architect, there's a presumption that there will be a vote of approval for the whole. You have to approve the money for the whole building first. Why not? What if you do the architect?
This would give us a plan to move forward with, and the approval for the actual building would come at a later date. And we would need a plan in order.
You're basing the figure on a calculation that you come up with that the building is going to cost X amount of dollars, right? So you have an idea of how much the building is going to cost. According to Port City Architects, yes. That was presented to the town. And I understand that, and I understand the need to get, architectural rendering, but what if you spent the money on architectural rendering and the town didn't approve the project? Based on the amount of money that it was going to cost. Well, that's a question for, that's a broader question than I'm in a position to answer. You're tossing it out there. Just suggesting that we just to consider it, let's just say that this well-deserved, I mean, this is a step you need to take, but if upon getting the architectural rendering, the town that we don't want to do it, what do you do?
So I'm thinking of this as a step process, just like from the money that we asked the town for last year to do the step with Port City Architect,
You do it.
Susan Peters.
So I understand it's a step process, but can you understand the logic behind the municipal budgeting process? We just have to know.
So I guess my question to you would be, how would you want us to do it? I think the town knows this because from the very beginning, we've talked about this project.
I think, from my perspective, that next process, it would be, you go to the town meeting and say, would you approve whatever, $5.6 million to build a future facility? And then if they say yes, then you can then deduct or approve. Because the town, see, I don't know how. Where the funding is gonna have to come from? Is the assumption that the funding is gonna come directly from the town, or will it be grants? I mean, there are a couple of questions about where that funding is gonna come.
There are a lot of questions over where that funding's going to come from, but we would not be able to apply for grants without a reasonable shovel-ready project. And to be shovel-ready, you need a rendering that shows all facilities within the building, the electrical, the plumbing, the heating, the
Yeah, let's call it construction costs, not rendering, just for clarity's sake.
I mean, I'm just one of three, I'm just giving you an opinion. I think that, you know, this step has to be taken, but if the step is taken and with any understanding of town politics, I think that you need to be pretty sure that the town is going to proceed with the project. I mean, it's certainly clear it is, but if it, you know.
Well, they have approved our last request.
That
They-
doesn't matter, Susan. I mean, the last request was for, $50,000. The total project request is a pretty large sum, which is gonna, sort of change the reality of the town. Shouldn't you ask the town, given that you now have a pretty reasonable understanding of that cost, whether or not the town would like to move forward with that cost? Or is the assumption that the town already knows how much it's gonna cost? You understand what I'm talking about?
Well, the town does know. I mean, the town has a cost as presented by Port City Architecture. Now, one more time with feeling, I am not familiar with the governmental steps, but I guess my question to you is the Future Facilities Committee needs a directive regarding what our next step is. And if that is your answer, then we will work with accordingly.
Thank you for being, I'm just suggesting that if you put your eggs in this basket, very logical from this, and you go to town meeting and you ask for this, and they say, because there will be questions. So what is the total cost of the building?
Mhm.
And if some people are less informed than the people of this group, they say, we're not gonna pay that. Then where does this request go? Rather than telling the people, look, we're gonna come to you pretty soon with a request for $5 million project. You're gonna have to approve. In order for us to request this, we're gonna need $300,000, whatever it's gonna be, $400,000 for construction. Would you vote for the construction costs, knowing that incumbent upon that is gonna be another request for $6 million? You understand what I mean?
I understand, but my question remains the same. I mean, is that the directive?
It's not direct.
Or what is the next step?
Do we have, I get what you're saying. Do we have, can we put before the town the total cost and then what the total cost would be, and then some kind of a forecast of what we think we might, no commitments, but what we're gonna attempt to raise through grants? Because I think the point you made, Andy, about needing one thing in order to get the other, I think that's pretty compelling.
Mm.
But I also completely understand what you're saying, which is, why would we sink this much money into something the town isn't actively saying, we commit to do this? We know it probably won't be a $6 million project, because we're gonna probably get some grants, but we're gonna invest the $394,000 now, because we need that to have any chance of being able to build the building. Do we have enough information to be able to say, we're hoping to raise half of this through grants, or?
We don't have that figure right now.
A lot of them are the governmental grants and
You don't know.
they go year by
don't
year.
know.
They-
Yeah.
Right, you don't know. But at least we could maybe say that so people understand, I'm not signing up to spend $5 million. I'm gonna sign up that we need this building. We know it's gonna cost whatever it's gonna cost, $5.4 million. We're gonna do our best to get grants, and I'm willing to sign up for $400,000 investment, to put us in the best possible position to get those grants. That's kind of what we're asking people to do. Acknowledge the total cost, acknowledge the effort to get the grants, but understand that we can't get the grants, we don't make this investment. And my next question is there any middle ground here? Like, do you have to have that full analysis? Is there a cheaper way to do it that still puts you in a position to get the grants?
That's an excellent question that I don't have an answer for. I did pass that on to Andy Higgins in the email that I sent him asking him for information.
Okay.
So hopefully he can provide some insight.
Bo Chesney did a lot of research with the grants and with the government, and correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding was we have to be ready with money approved to start in order to get that grant. So that would mean, and we have had a couple of times in the state of Maine, and we've gotten significant money for their stations for
Yeah.
this.
Right.
We've done a lot of work, and none of us can promise the town anything. We just know how many times it's showed in the comprehensive plan that we've needed this, and the needs assessment that we've needed it, and the support that we've received from the town so far in the requests that we've received or put out there.
Does anyone know procedurally in government how this is done in other towns?
Well, I certainly want to talk to the town attorney to get some clarification on whether, I guess the town, if it votes on it, can spend the money. Sorry. If the town meeting votes on it, it can spend the money any way they want. I just don't, I'd like to know, I'd like to have some clarification on which way to go on it. We can approve this and send it to the town. If that's the budget committee and the select board, I'm just suggesting that you want this to go. Everybody wants this building to go. You want to do it in a way that doesn't hold any surprises for anybody in the town. So I think the article has to be written fairly clearly that with this fee comes a projected expense of X amount of dollars to build the facility. because we're not spending this fee in a vacuum. Right? This fee is attached to another expenditure that will need to be raised in order to make this fee a rational expense.
Wouldn't that be included in the warrant article explanation? That would be underneath it?
The narrative that I do on the side.
So rather than asking people to agree now to spend the money, you lay all this out, you're saying? So that
Mhm.
people understand, this is what it costs for us to even have the opportunity to get these grants.
I'd have to obviously have a discussion with the town attorney, but the article could even be written with to raise an appropriate or transfer, whatever we're gonna do, up to 500,000, I think is what your request is, for an engineering design or an architectural design for a building that could potentially, and trust me, this is not the exact wording, that could potentially be a $5.6 million. Like, we could include that, and then the narrative on the side has a little bit more detail about why this is needed, what the next steps are, why it makes it shovel-ready to get more grants, that we expect to get grants and funding, you know, so not all of that 5.4 or 6 is coming from taxation down the road too. I think it's a matter of educating the voters of what this is
More
about.
than willing to do a couple public hearings before, like we do with other, to explain the process.
We'd be having one, and that article, you know, would be part of it when we have the public hearing on the warrant too. So that would be a really good time to just have full discussions on that as well, if the article goes on. I think we also need to look at the undesignated fund balance policy too, because I'm not sure that we can use unassigned fund for this. It might have to be through taxation. So that's the other piece that I do not want to speak without reviewing that policy either way at this point. I would definitely.
Question for legal to see if.
Absolutely.
Policy
Mhm.
change.
Yep, absolutely. I can send it right to them too and get clarification, because I'd want to make sure we were following along with policy and doing that correctly as well.
Transfer. All right, so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jesse Peters. I just want to add in that one benefit of breaking out the architectural plans from the rest of the project is that gives us the ability to shop around and not be stuck with just Port City. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Okay.
You know, it's, so hearing about a new fire station is great, and people like talking about it.
A lot of money.
Gonna be repairable. I love talking about like buying a new tractor. Till I go to the store. I think as much as we need a new fire station, people, before they're gonna spend this money, they're gonna wanna know, so what's gonna be the total bill. I just think it's only fair to alert people that, you know, there's a lot of money.
But are you agreeing that we can alert them without having to make the decision to spend that future money today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna back off. Maybe I overstated. I just think people should be aware of the sticker shock.
Yeah.
And that's gonna have to come from legal, from a legal interpretation of A, whether or not we can use undesignated fund balance to fund a construction cost. B, how we can word the warrant article so that it would include, it cannot be in anecdotal information on the side. It has to be within the warrant article, to be sure. So now our attorney could do that. Okay. So with those provisos, would the committee, based on budget committee recommendations, we want to consider? Given that we'll have to go to legal and there have to be some inclusion in the warrant articles stating the kind of final cost for the warrant article for whatever reason.
What was your question again?
My question was, given the conditions that I'm setting forward, would the committee be willing to present the request in a warrant article that states that the Future Facilities Commission is proposing I don't remember the right figure, so it's going to say $5.5 million project. In order to move forward, the Future Facilities Commission is asking the town to appropriate up to $500,000. Let's just say out of taxation for architectural rendering or structure.
And can we also, maybe as a side note, maybe not in the warrant, but bring up the points about needing that in order to get grants? I don't, that probably doesn't have to be in the warrant, but it can be,
There can be so much public
Yeah.
information, whether it's at a desk, whether it's in a handout, whether it's at the public hearings. There's so much, but
Yeah, I would want to work on that wording a little bit with the committee. I think that we probably would want the dollar request to come first, but I don't want to speak for the committee, so maybe we can work with the select board and our committee to work on the wording.
well, whatever you want, we'll have to start with the town attorney. Just ask the town attorney, so how could this be worded so that it's a legal town meeting warrant article? Sorry to be so dry, but that's.
Oh, yeah.
I get you, but I don't know anything about building. What do you think, budget committee? This,
I think this makes sense that we would craft, if I understand everything we're agreeing to, that we craft an article that would disclose the potential future cost, but not ask the town to commit to spend that money, but disclose it and then ask for the up to, and I also think we should try to see if we can get a number lower than 394,000, because I think that
Don't count on it.
feels like such a big number, you know?
Don't count on it.
Don't count, it's gonna be more. Okay.
And maybe somebody will leave us $1 million in the meantime.
The 5.5 million, was, a reduced building from what was originally wanted.
Okay.
I mean, we
And
had
I
it-
appreciate you showed us this, so we understand the math. Okay, okay, so I'll get that out of my head. But yeah, I would, as a member of the budget committee, I would support that approach because I think we're disclosing everything. We can have a lot of supplemental information and we're asking approval up to whatever the end number is you want to have, up to $500,000. I think that's a fair way to do it.
that is a fair way to, that covers.
And that up to 500,000, as I said, I mean, I started out by saying, excuse me, that I want to drill down and get a more exact, more reflective number. We're just talking, we're talking ballpark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I believe that can be amended down at town meeting, but not up. Correct?
That is correct.
But we really aren't gonna know until we go out for proposals.
What, for our?
You might as well go.
Yeah. We won't know the,
Well, no, we set, we set the fee that we're willing to pay, I'm quite sure. We're still following up on that, to see if there are any, requirements, for setting.
The
fees.
attorney was on vacation last week, so
That-
that's
that-
why we haven't heard back. And then I'm sure he's catching up with many, many requests, but I did send him the request. I'm just waiting to hear.
So. Next meeting, you think you'd be able to craft some language?
I'll call him. Yeah, the next meeting, you're going to be reviewing the draft warrant, so it would be good to kind of have a rough, yeah.
Anybody who's involved in this, come back for our next meeting, push it right on the front of the meeting, so we can talk about it. I think the budget committee's already given their approval for the warrant article. We just need more acknowledgement that the warrant article says what.
Are you okay with the warrant article?
I think I was trying to, like, I'm trying to think, like, as a taxpayer, as someone who lives here, like, what would I want? If I didn't come to these meetings and I didn't know anything, I would want that context, like, I would, and yeah. I
In the
think that- I
warrant,
think the
right.
warrant is the best, is a great way to get that information out. And to like elicit discussion and to hopefully give people the context that this is an investment that would potentially unlock further resources to be able to help fund.
That's good wording right there.
Yeah.
Do you have funds for like a postcard mailer for this year that we could even mail to everyone to just include like some of that information outside of the quarterly? Because sometimes I think there's a lot of information in the quarterly, but if this was a standalone little one flyer, a nice bright paper again, where it just gets that education out there. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you what needs to be in, but after I talk with the attorney to know, then I'll tell you. Because there are very specifics when it comes to articles, how they have to be worded. And now we have heard now. So when if it's coming from taxation, we say raise and appropriate. So raise is raising it through taxation, appropriate spending the money. We've now heard that we have to add raise and appropriate through taxation. But that's what raise and appropriate means. So we're getting clarity on that we now have to add that language into the warrant article. So we just want to make sure that we use the exact parameters and our town attorney will help us there. So, yep.
Can I just also say, I think if we do send out some kind of a communication, maybe this is obvious, but we should do it coming from an assumption that the person reading it doesn't have the history of the past conversations and what we did last year and what it is we're trying to do. Because I knew what we were talking about as soon as we started talking about it, but not everyone.
Might be able to pull excerpts from the previous annual report where it talked about the work that the first committee did that leads us to this point in that mailer. But that's another, talk for another time. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's good.
When they see $5
We need to be at the school or it's going to be hot.
Yeah, we can do it.
And late.
So, on the agenda for next meeting, which is when, that week,
2 weeks from today, what is the day? We're at the 24th? Yeah. Getting late. I lost an hour last night.
24th.
24th, thank you.
put out a reminder to the future facility committee. We'll put it on our website, session is happening, and the budget committee always will. So, thank you for this. This is very helpful.
Oh, you're welcome.
That was very
Really, really helpful. Kind of daunting.
Should I be prepared to talk to the attorney?
Be prepared to talk to me for follow-up questions probably. And if I feel like I might need to have you come in and sit in on a phone call, then I'll reach right out to you directly. Yeah.
You have my number.
I have your number.
Becky, can you give us, not now, but so the budget committee is meeting on the 17th
Mhm.
in its own meeting,
Mhm.
but in its own meeting.
Mhm.
Can you give us some guidance
Mhm.
at that meeting,
Yes.
you and Andy, on what we should do at that meeting? And if we need to meet a subsequent time, we
Yeah.
can, but related to I know what we have to do in general at the meeting.
Sure. But just clarification about what,
This.
right, so typically the budget committee does not have any recommendation or oversight on committee reports. However, we feel it's important that you hear this because it goes into the overall, budget,
Yes.
really for consideration of everything we're doing. So,
Thank you, that's what
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, next up is the Economic Development Sustainability Committee. Thank you for being so patient.
You got it.
Are you ready for?
I'm getting out really. Hey, everybody. My name is Dan Brewer. I'm the chair of the Economic Development and Sustainability Committee. This is going to be a napkin sketch in comparison to what we've all done thus far tonight. So, was there a printout at all, Becky, or did I send it super late?
Slipped it into their packet.
Okay, great. So everybody's looking at roughly the same thing I am. Lovely.
Okay, so the EDSC is seeking $75,519. This is gonna bridge the gap on our current budget, which is $24,481 that was left over from last year. We are seeking these funds for two critical projects that we've been working on our committee. So primary projects in the larger dollar amount, which we're estimating is gonna be a total of $80,000. Is for a civil and site design for water and infrastructure plan. So currently, working directly with Tom, who's the town planner, there has been a test well that's been dug up Elmwood. That was done through some grant money as well as some money that was appropriated here. And that well is performing extremely well. So one of the things that we are now looking to do is to figure out, working with a local and small and qualified engineering firm, is what would it take to get a design done to see what it would look like to bring water into the town, to facilitate what future economic development would look like here. It's hard to bring businesses here and develop a downtown area in the village core without there being city services for them to tap into. So this would be just that engineering report to understand what it would look like for likely a series of pumps or a gravity feed that would work up over the hill and come down into the center, potentially looking at what that would look like to make it potentially into a loop system. And then also what it would look like to have a storage facility, whether we need to do 250,000 gallons, 1,000,000 gallons, something in between, depending on what we're looking at for future economic development in the town, which we know is going to be slow, but we want to kind of future-proof the system to understand where we can go in the future. So that's the primary. And then the secondary is, there was a report done with GP Cog last year or the year before with the previous committee, where we've gathered a ton of data from that report. We also with the town visioning session that was done, so that we understand a little bit about, you know, what the residents of Pownell are looking for in the village core. What we'd like to do is start to take that information and organize it in a way where we can understand a path forward for our committee to figure out what actual actionable items can be in a town that's small, that we want to grow slowly with rural independence. But we understand that we're up against things like LD 2003, which is a state level bill that requires towns to have a certain amount of their downtown be residential. So we have some zoning issues there. We have some density issues there that we're working around. So we would like to work with an external consultant to support that further town visioning, so that we can understand how to take these kind of pressure points that we have and start to make a path forward. So there's $20,000 that we're looking for that. So the total, obviously, that we're asking for is $75,519. That is what we're looking for. Questions?
Very clear. Any questions?
Yeah. This is a substantial increase.
Yeah.
In the budget. And I'm not sure. Right. Yeah, I'm not sure we can just approve this.
This would also be a warrant.
Can I offer some help, Kate?
Yeah, sure.
So for me, this looks like a logical next step. That there's the water. Can you pull that up?
Yep.
What is that?
Water capacity study.
So the water capacity study was done so that this step could be completed. Without that, this doesn't work. But without this, that's inconsequential. That's just, we know nothing about whether or not we can actually bring water to the town. So although it is a lot of money, it's also something that would, just like the previous presentation, would set up an opportunity to at least consider what that downtown find it bizarre that they should go out downtown. What downtown could look like in lieu or in knowledge that LD 2003 is going to throw like real curveball the next year. So I'm just suggesting that I know it's a lot of money, but if the board, the select board is seriously interested in participating in kind of a plan, and I think money, from my perspective, and I'm one of three, money really well spent. And the other money, I'm sure they're just gonna go. It's also, sorry, I was kidding.
Well, I was at the GP visioning session. And just having been there, participating in that, and looking at what the existing budget is, it's just a big jump, and I think it needs to go through the same kind of stringent process that we're talking about the fire station going through.
So how would that, what would that process?
Something like a public hearing or clarity on language on the warrant article.
Go ahead, Ian.
First off, Dan, I just want to ask you, is this an arbitrary figure, or did you do some research to figure out where you would be consulting with a civil and site design engineer?
Yeah, so this was information that Tom gave me. He's done a lot of site work in the past. We realized we needed to make a budget submission like on Friday. So we wanted to come and like be able to secure money based on what Tom said. So we have not yet interacted with any civil engineers to pull pricing, but he felt like these were pretty clear numbers for 2024 dollars. So we added probably $5,000 on top of his suggestion.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did we at any point ever summarize and sort of share the results of the yeah. Was that shared? So, because I might have missed it, but do we know that, you know, was there a consensus in the town about what we want to plan for and what options we want to explore?
I don't know as there was a clear consensus. There were a lot of recommendations from GP cog, action items. But there was no absolute consensus. If you got 5 people in this town together in a room, none of them would agree on everything.
What I'm wondering is like, is there a sentiment, maybe consensus is wrong, that we do want to think differently about our downtown? I mean, beyond the select board, who is obviously extremely invested in thinking about the future of the town.
Well,
We have a sense that, yeah, just generally, not everybody, and maybe it's not a majority, but that people want to be proactive about thinking about what we want and don't want, because I know we're very much about what we don't want.
Can I take that?
one of
You go. Yeah, go.
One of the biggest things is GP cog never considered LD 2003. That wasn't even a consideration when that came out. So now we're dealing with that,
And that's primarily why we're asking for the 20K for the secondary line item is we'd like to take the information that's in that GP cog, because there are some themes, yeah, exactly, that extend across, right? Like housing is definitely an issue. Elder care is definitely an issue, right? There's several things that there were a lot of, you know, if you could say 70 to 75% of the populace felt were really important. So what we'd like to do is understand that and sort of like, what can we distill down and say, these really need to be our action items? And then what's an actual path forward, right? Because right now we're sort of like, yeah, great. Like, okay, let's build a nursing home, but like, that's not going to happen tomorrow, right? So we need to figure out what that path forward is, where we can take kind of small actionable steps.
Would it make any sense to do the warrant in a way that the town could approve all or part? So that there's an option, for example, to say, we want to spend that 20,000 for exactly the reason you just described, but in this year, we don't also want to spend the money to figure out the water. We'll do that, is there a way to?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you suggesting 2 warrant items?
I'm not a warrant expert, but just,
Or just mean that-
yeah, maybe it is too warrant. I also don't want to like make it into a bigger thing than it is, but I think it is a pretty big deal and the town might want to choose to do some, but not all.
Once again, going back to this day's comments. When people hear that the town is looking to develop a water supply for downtown, that's gonna catch some people's attention. Okay, and that might be a good thing because we have spent, how old are we now? 203?
Our birthday was last Monday, March 3rd, 1808.
203, right?
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
spent 203 years here with a minimum of plan. And when all you have to do is drive down Route 9 and get our neighbor down there, and that is a situation that happened with another paucity of plan. Give it to a developer, off they went. So, although there are, I'm sure there are questions about water, but if we don't, from my perspective, 103, we don't step forward and become proactive and say, well, believe it or not, this town is going to change. We don't want that. We're going to like kick and scream and say, we want this town to be, it's not. So, Dan, what would it be like, because you're gonna have to go through 2 public hearings, and anyway, what if we had 2 warrant?
I think that's in response to Donna's comments. If you wanted them to have the choice, the 2 articles make the most sense. Because if we combine it into one and we say up to whatever the 100,000, that has to be factored in to the taxation mill rate. So then if they choose, well, we're just gonna do the 20,000, I've still had to figure that extra 80,000 when I'm doing tax commitment. And I think it's a little more fiscal responsible to separate it out and give the opportunity for everybody to vote in the way they want to. And then we're being a little more accurate and not pulling money that we're not going to spend.
So. Okay, I'm getting this now. I was gonna ask, what are you gonna do with the 24,481 that you have right now? But I understand exactly now. That brings it to a.
I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No, I think probably. If I had my druthers, I would rather see the $20,000 consultant for further town visioning
Which we could do with our current budget.
before the water and infrastructure plan, because I'm sure you could do that at any time. The pricing on that is going to change yearly. The pricing on implementing it's going to change yearly.
So to put these 2 requests, 2 different warrant items, and just so you understand the procedure, we'll have 2 public hearings. At those public hearings, love for you to come. If there's an overwhelming, like, hue and cry about this, then, we probably suggest that we move one or both of them. Just so that the momentum of the committee has already established, wouldn't be like solely disputed.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's,
totally.
it's kind of those public hearings are a great struggle.
Cool.
Okay?
Yeah,
You'd
that
be
sounds,
willing to-
yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate this. I think it's, you know, a logical extension.
Sorry, it's so rudimentary.
I also think, I think you have some time now,
Yeah, right.
preparation wise, to maybe come up with more accurate.
Yeah, this will be much
numbers.
more comprehensive next time. Yeah, 100%.
Thank you. Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Also, Dan, Maine Rural Water Association
Yeah.
may do a lot of your design work for.
No, she's coming back. Sure.
So, okay, next item on the agenda is proposed CEO ordinance edits. So this is just, the CEO who's gone through our ordinance.
Okay, so we're finished, right? Okay, thank you very much.
Jim, can you step up and step with us? Thank you for being so patient. Appreciate that.
So they were gone.
Oh, he's still with us.
Both seats are ones.
So we all have, all look at this, so. So can you just give us your recommendation? You recommend that we take these amendments or corrections and put them to effect right now and put them on one warrant article, multiple warrant, or any thought?
I don't know exactly what the process would be on that.
I can explain that real quick. So each section has to have its own warrant article. So 504 would have its own. Looking through real fast. 600 performance standard would have its own. 603 backlots would have its own, et cetera, et cetera. This has not gone before the attorney. This is really merely for the select board to review, say, let's move forward. I can start prepping the articles. He's going to review. And when we come back for the draft in 2 weeks, we're just a little further into the process and ready to go because we're really only a month away from the first public hearing. So
I'd like to go through the attorney first to make sure that they line up with LD 2003. To my understanding, I believe they do, but I haven't been involved with this too awful long, so I'd like his take on it as well, before we move forward to writing the article.
the articles are easy to write. Actually, it's really a copy paste for me for the most part. So, and because you've actually created the exhibit, that makes the warrant articles super easy because I can reference this as the exhibit for all of that too. So it really simplifies that. So I can send this out with the board's approval to Mr. McCall tomorrow and start that process.
I agree. Yep, I think we should move forward and send it to the. I will move that we send the edits from the CEO to the attorney for review.
Seconded, any further discussion? All in favor? Yeah, this is what we have needed for 15 years. So much to do. So we should have by next meeting, some information.
I will make sure because we'll be in draft warrant. Yep. We got to do it. Yep.
Thing that with your initiative, how we're gonna request you to be in public.
Is there any questions from the select board on this?
I looked at this pretty carefully and I agree with some I understand about But that's okay.
That's why we pay him to understand. those.
These the ordinances surrounding how you approve their thing is going to be sort of the burr on the backside of code enforcement. I really appreciate the CEO being sort of at least we're defensible. Any questions, Kate, about this at all? Andy?
No, oh, we're good. We're good. I'm just looking at the back lot real quick.
So there are, there are a couple of changes in the back lot. One, a couple of changes that don't have to do with LD 2003 is one is that the way it was written, it said you had to have 3 acres for the residual lot. And I was there when the ordinance was written, and that wasn't really the intention. The intention was to have a minimum size residual lot, not including the easement to the back lot, which makes it about 3 acres in most cases. So, but the way it got written was you need to maintain 3 acres plus the residual, plus the easement, so.
Makes it a hardship for people.
Exactly. It puts it up over the targeted amount of acreage that was thought of for the ordinance.
All right, well, I'm sure with the attorney's interpretation, we'll have probably more questions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I really put this forward. Thanks. Get more time too. Get it bad for that. All right, next item on the agenda, poll permit, Alex Pickett Road, Mr. Nielsen. What's that?
Yeah, I'm looking at it, I'm all set with it.
Move that we approve the poll permit for Pickett Road.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is Comcast grant.
So they sent an email to the select board a couple weeks ago, then she forwarded it to me. And so basically Comcast has identified there's some underserved populations in Pownell. And through grant money, through that BEAD program, which we tried to get through Fidium last year, they want to rectify that, and a letter of support from the town would help with the process. This is a template that she sent. If you're good with it, I'll fill in the blanks and get it back to her. The deadline is actually this week, thank you, to apply for the grant program.
Well, first off, are they cheaper than Spectrum?
I have no idea. I think honestly, aren't they just all one at this point? They're all one.
Yeah, I will move that we move forward with the Comcast BEAD grant process.
Seconded, discussion, all in favor, thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Any other new business?
Yeah.
Any old business? Yes.
So I forwarded the building release form on to the folks at 645 Hallwell Road. There was a clause in there, number 4, that they didn't like. Basically, it said for example, if we are burning the building and a flying ember flies over and catches the neighbor's house on fire, we're not responsible. So they asked to have that removed. I sent it up to the attorney and he said, yeah, that's fine. He goes, I try to protect the town as much as I can, but yeah, that's a reasonable request. So he removed it and I resent it to him. So that's where we are. Yep.
Don't burn on a windy day.
All right, I've got a couple of things here, I'm not quite sure.
Correspondence, yeah.
The other one was any correspondence?
So a couple of letters came in late last week. One is about the Berlin subdivision rail use advisory. Many of you know, a couple of years ago that was going on. It's what to do with that section of rail that runs through town. So they now are forwarding legislation to make it be a trail. So this was just a letter that came to the town that said these are the next steps happening. I just wanted to report out. The other piece was CMP sent a letter that they're going to be doing tree work in the town this spring and summer to continue to try to keep power lines and clear. So if you happen to see, you know, trucks out and about, CMP is contracting with people. My final piece was a lot of correspondence with Casella on Friday. I happened to log into my emails for another reason, and then it became the long process of talk with them. I gave them direct lines for emergency personnel, and they continued to call office lines, getting no answer, frustrated, and they were going to call 911 at one point in time because they could not get a hold of the road commissioner or the fire chief, and I had given them the direct lines at that point. So many trees down on Friday, a lot of communication and work done by all. Public Works came in, I think fire came in and helped, and the route got done, and then they sent me the backup of missed pickups, and they were naming roads that didn't even exist in Pownell. And I said, well, can you clarify the names of these roads? And they went, oh, they're other towns. So it was an interesting communication throughout the day on Friday with Casella. And again, I forwarded all that information on to Solid Waste. They continue to compile that information. That's my correspondence.
So do they not know what town they're in?
That what I was.
Casella did call me to tell me that there was a tree on the wires on the street. But that's all.
I think that was after I finally in bolded highlighted your number because they were continuing to call the station. I mean, 3 emails, and I'm like, are you not reading my response? And I finally said, if you need to get in touch with the fire chief, you need to call this line. It's the office line's not manned, and it was.
So it's really late, but we do have to go into executive session, so I'm gonna move. Sorry, Kathy. I'm sorry. I wasn't picking on you.
Say, I would love to be there, but just for the last meeting, we're going to talk briefly about communication for solid waste and specifically recycling in Powell. And I reached out to Dan Nelson about Community Day, which would be a really great opportunity to do a big thing about that. He was all excited about it. And I didn't know if you would be interested as our school liaison, was seeing if the fifth grade teachers would be interested in having her kids do a project.
Absolutely. That's on.
That's all about it. We usually have the domain trash car here, you know, and, you know, it might be a perfect opportunity. So that was what I wanted to
Yeah.
bring forward.
I actually have a meeting with the 5th grade teacher this week, so.
You can keep Dan in the loop. I told him to reach out to you, but he's excited about it.
Yeah.
So, okay. Now I'm done.
So, thank you all for attending. I'm going to move that we go into executive session at 9 o'clock for personnel matters.
Second.